YouTube? Welcome back to a brand new stream. And today we're gonna be seeing and reacting to the most canceled person in America, and if not the whole world. The Nick Fuentes interview. Nick Fuentes is a very controversial person, chat, and honestly, he said some very wild things, chat. But at the end of the day, chat, this is all entertainment purposes only, chat. So let's get right into the video. Let's go.
Today's guest is the most canceled man on earth.
Rock bottom looks like that. Broke, no income, no platform. Probably 80% of my inner circle completely abandoned me.
A Catholic boy from the suburbs of Chicago, he was obsessed with history, politics, and the search for truth.
That is really the anatomy of how somebody is canceled. They'll pay somebody a full-time salary and they start to poke and look for ways that they can hurt you, to persuade you to stop saying the things that you're saying.
But after years of forming his opinions and sharpening his debate skills, he asked one question that changed everything.
Now you're able to talk a little bit more openly about, let's say, black crime. You're able to talk more about illegal immigration. You're able to talk about Indians in a derogatory way. But the one group you're still not allowed to criticize is...
In this episode, we'll hear from the voice that has divided a nation, expose the players trying to keep him silent, and question if he's really the villain they say he is, or the mirror that America doesn't want to face.
Everything that I did was for America. It was for Christianity. It wasn't for hatred of other groups. You know, it's a longing for justice.
Nicholas J. Fuentes. Welcome to the Jack Neel podcast.
Yeah, great to be with you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here, man. Guys, we are in an undisclosed warehouse right now. It's a little sketchy in here, but we thought it looked cool. So, Nick, you're banned on most social media platforms. You're on a no-fly list, your bank accounts are frozen, you're investigated by the FBI, and you even had someone try to come to your house to kill you.
Damn.
What exactly did you say that made you so dangerous?
Well, from the very beginning, the first thing that I said is that Israel is not our closest ally with the United States. And what is interesting is that so much has happened since that happened, which was about 8 years ago. And I guess it's important to understand how these things take place, which is that, for example, somebody showed up to my house with a gun trying to kill me because I said that after the election, I said, your body, my choice, which is like a twist on my body, my choice. I got doxxed. But my address had been on the internet because the SPLC posted it. Southern Poverty Law Center. This is one of these liberal outfits. They posted a photo of my house on their website. And this is, by the way, one of the richest nonprofits on the left. They're up there with the ADL. They're very wealthy, very powerful. It's important to understand, they put the address out there and crazy liberals, leftists got that, and they attacked my house because of something I said on Twitter. But it's important to know that I was targeted first by the SPLC, by the ADL. This is why my address is out there. This is why I was branded at one time a white supremacist and a white nationalist. And a lot of people don't understand that that is really the anatomy of how somebody is canceled, is you say something that is against, let's say, the hegemonic left. You say something that is against the most powerful global special interests. And people don't realize it works this way. So like, for example, you'll say, Israel's not our closest ally. And then a group like the ADL, which is a group, they're called Anti-Defamation League. They're against the defamation of Jewish people. A group like that will identify you as an enemy of their special interest, which is the Israel lobby. They will pay somebody, not a significant amount of money, but they'll pay somebody a full-time salary to then follow you around. How you make your money, what you do for a living, your family, your employers, employees, friends, associates. And they start to poke and look for ways that they can hurt you, to persuade you to stop saying the things that you're saying. So in my case, from a very early age, I was not really controversial when I got started. I didn't really say anything that was that out there, but I was saying that Israel's not our ally. So they put somebody on me. In this case, it was Jared Holt at Right Wing Watch. Right Wing Watch is a
Chat, I'm not gonna lie, chat, that's scary. Like, you know what I'm saying? The fact that you speak upon something and then they already on your ass investigating you. That shit is scary, chat.
subsidiary of People for the American Way, which is a Soros-funded nonprofit.
And chat, this is all entertainment purposes only. I'm not here to, you know what I'm saying? Just because I'm watching this interview does not mean I agree with Nick Fuentes. It does not mean I disagree with him. This is all just, you know, putting out the interview for you guys, chat.
Profit. So this guy would watch my show every night. He was paid to do this. It's his job. And he was paid to look for every time I said anything controversial, anything that sounded controversial, any joke that sounded offensive. And his job was then to clip what sounded bad, post it on Twitter, and say that represented that I'm a white nationalist, I'm an extremist, Christian fanatic. And this has taken place over the course of 10 years. Ever since I was 18 years old, this is what I have been subjected to. And after 10 years, you get a profile as all your worst clips, all the things that could sound bad. All those things have been compiled over your entire career, and then they make you out to be a fanatic, a nut job, a hateful person. And so that's how I got the reputation as a white nationalist, all of the above. What they then do, of course, is they rile up their base. So the person that showed up at my house was a 23-year-old kid. I don't actually know what his motivation was. The police never told me. I imagine he was maybe feeling bad about the election. He showed up at my house about a month after that. Maybe he was upset about my tweet about abortion or feminism. But he was effectively sicked on me by these types of groups that built up that catalog of horrible things that engage in that reputational destruction. And so that's just a little insight into how this, it's sort of the anatomy of a smear, the anatomy of that kind of labeling and that kind of smear campaign.
Who do you think invented cancel culture?
Cancel culture has been around forever. I think it's maybe a better way to say it is it's character assassination. And we live in an open society. I don't think there's a lot of assassinations anymore, although that's not really the case.
Chat, I know this is off topic, but honestly, the first person that I remember getting canceled, the first person that just comes up to my head when I just remembered about somebody getting canceled was Sam Pepper. Sam Pepper, chat. Sam Pepper was the first person to get canceled. The first person I witnessed that got canceled on the internet, which was, he got canceled because, I don't know, I think he did like a very messed up prank to like his friend, and then he did another prank that was SA, you know what I'm saying? So I know it's out of topic, chat, but somebody I remember, chat, that's the only person I really remember that got canceled first.
This year, Charlie Kirk was killed. They tried to kill Donald Trump. But generally speaking, we don't live in a very violent political order. So what they do now is they engage in reputational destruction, character assassination. If they don't like what you're saying, they go out there and they, like I said, they look for your worst moment, a bad joke, a salacious personal scandal, and then they air that out to hurt your reputation and get you to apologize or stop saying what you're saying. And so I think that cancel culture has been around for a long time, but now the people that are using it the most, it is the billionaire political class. It is the oligarchs, effectively. Because you look at the most powerful people that are running our country, they have blood on their hand. They have blood on their hands. These are some of the worst people in the world. We're just now seeing some of the Jeffrey Epstein files come out. This is a notorious trafficker who rolls with underage girls, engages in blackmail. Of course, he dies under mysterious circumstances. He's friends with the most powerful people in the world. They're engaged in war crimes. They're engaged in corruption, bribery, lobbying. But billionaires are never canceled.
Chat, that's something I would have to agree with, chat. How the hell was it possible for somebody as, disgusting as Jeffrey Epstein being able to have all these contacts. I mean, if you watch my previous live stream, one of my previous live streams, we went over all the people that Jeffrey Epstein had connections to, all the way from kings, princes, prime ministers, presidents, governors, influencers, just celebrities, in like royal families. Like literally this person had connections to everybody, chat. Everybody. And you know what I'm saying? Nobody ever canceled Jeffrey Epstein. Nobody. I mean, one thing I would have to come out here and say, chat, and point out, we have protests. We have all kinds of fucking protests, right? In America. Cool. Free speech. But we never seen a fucking Jeffrey Epstein protest. I've never seen hundreds of thousands of people protesting across the country to protest about the files, or when he was alive, about go check his fucking phone, go pull up on his island. Like nobody ever came out and protested, hey, guys, look, Jeffrey, you know what I'm saying, Chad? I don't know. That's just me, though. I feel like people are getting brainwashed into, like, creating these protests that, you know, obviously, they don't really, like, make a huge impact. You feel me? Unless you target a specific person or organization that's pretty much weak that you could really, like, bring down, such as Jeffrey Epstein. But nobody goes out there and protests for these things. Anyways, let's get back into the video, chat.
It's always small-time political activists. It's always rogue congressmen like Thomas Massie or Marjorie Taylor Greene. There's an asymmetry, which is to say that it's always media money and power that are using reputational destruction against the weaker people typically that have very little influence or very little power. And they do that to silence dissent. So cancel culture is something that is used mainly by the powerful. It's asymmetric warfare.
You noted on your stream last night, it led me to this logical conclusion that they kind of manufactured it in a way like, oh, this is racist, this is homophobic, this is transphobic. But really, the only effect you get is when you say something anti-Semitic, you know?
Right.
So, like, are you conspiratorial to the point where you believe that the whole thing was manufactured just so no one could say anything that was considered anti-Semitic by their standards?
I think it speaks to who wields the power in the country, because there's that famous adage, which is to learn who rules over you, learn who you're not allowed to criticize. That's attributed to Voltaire. Voltaire didn't say that, but nevertheless, it's very true. And it goes without saying, if you're at your job, you can't criticize your boss. You can't ridicule or attack your boss. Why? Your boss has power over you. If you offend him, he'll fire you. Similarly, in the United States, for roughly the last 10 or 15 years, it was very acceptable to attack straight white men, Christians. They were the butt of every joke. You could make fun of Southerners. You could make fun of hillbillies with Southern accents. You could make fun of white people for not having a culture, not being able to dance, attribute all the evils of the world to white people, or Christians for that matter. You were not allowed to criticize racial and religious and ethnic minorities. You couldn't criticize blacks, Hispanics, Asians. Couldn't talk about mass migration. What has changed in the past year, though, is that it seems that some of the political correctness concerning the minorities has gone away. And in the past year, it seems now you're able to talk a little bit more openly about, let's say, black crime. People talk about black fatigue. You're able to talk more about illegal immigration, which is largely an Hispanic issue. You're able to talk about Indians in a derogatory way. But what is interesting is that a year after the Trump revolution in 24, Trump gets back in, political correctness seems to be dead. You look across the board. You can still criticize white people, and the left frequently does. Now you're able to criticize non-white people and the racial ethnic minorities. But the one group you're still not allowed to criticize is Jews. If you're called racist, that gets laughed off now. If you're called anti-white, well, you know, the left is pretty openly anti-white. But to this day, you still cannot be, you know, so-called or in reality anti-Semitic. And if you're following the logic, you can't criticize the powerful, those that rule over you. That would seem to suggest that if you can't criticize, maybe they're the most powerful ethnic group in the United States of America. I think that's logical.
Nick, I do want to touch on that in a bit. First, I want to talk briefly about your backstory. I feel as though your interviews with Patrick Bet-David and Tucker kind of covered that fairly well. But some similarity that you and I have is you're a fellow speech and debate kid, right? You won 4 competitions in extemporaneous speaking in 2015, which is basically like giving a political speech on the fly. Do you think like being a debate kid kind of made you the speaker you are? Or do you think you've kind of always had this interest?
I always had this interest.
Yeah.
I always loved politics. Ever since I was 12 or 11 years old, it was always my thing. I started to get into it really because I was just curious about the world. You sort of start to develop your consciousness around that age. You could say when you're like 10, 11, 12 years old, start to become aware.
I have a quick theory, chat. So he says he was in speech and debate. And he's into like a very controversial like topic, you know, which is the reason why he's very big and known, you know. He has a huge fan base because he's very controversial. He says a bunch of things that not anybody will say, you know. And there's a lot of people who agree with him, and there's a lot of people who disagree with him. But I feel like his tactic is this. He's very controversial, right? He's in a very controversial, he knows exactly how to trigger people, right? If you're Hispanic, he's going to hit you with some immigration shit, you feel me? To me personally, as a Mexican, it doesn't really trigger me. But if you're like, a specific race, he's going to find something to trigger you, and he's going to say some stereotypical things about you, you know what I'm saying, chat? And at the same time, he was in speech and debate. How the fuck is you expecting to, like, debate with somebody who went to speech and debate? You know what I'm saying? Like me, my vocabulary is ass, bro. He's just gonna fry me at the end of the day, chat. You know what I'm saying? So he has a very good strategy that got him to like where he's at today. You feel me? Speech and debate, he's very good at speaking. He's very fast as well, like at speaking and like pointing out topics and facts and shit like that, you feel me? And researches that he makes. And at the same time, he triggers you. And at the same time, he's just fast as fuck at it, you know what I'm saying, Che? He's very controversial. And thanks to that, he just pretty much blew the fuck up, chat. It's crazy though, you know what I'm saying? But shit.
And I just started to think about worldly things. I wanted to know about history. I wanted to know about politics. The 2012 election was coming up, and I was a very young boy, but I wanted to know what was happening. So I went all in, and I read as much as I could. I really got into the libertarian stuff. I got into Milton Friedman, Thomas Sowell, and then in high school, I really did get into, like you said, extemporaneous speaking, speech team, Model UN.
Did you do that your senior year?
I did it the whole time I was in high school, yeah.
Got it. I was curious, did you ever, because it's a fairly leftist activity, did you ever lose any competitions or like get in beef with anyone over saying something controversial in that activity?
Oh, yeah, all the time. I'll never forget, I was at sectionals or regionals. I think I won sectionals and maybe got to regionals my junior year. And they gave us, one of the topics I got for extemporaneous speaking was about Obama. And in the speech, I said Obama wasn't born in America. And I think every judge ranked me in last place just because I said that.
That makes sense.
It was very left-wing, yeah.
I had a fairly similar experience with the activity. I did quite well, actually. Like, I was a national champion in it. So, like, that's why I was so nerdy and went through your stuff. And I was like, how was Nick in this activity? Because he's a great speaker, but I can't imagine him doing that well with libertarian or conservative beliefs. Did you ever get kicked off the team, or were they pretty cool with you overall?
They were cool. The coaches knew that I was extremely conservative, and they were very liberal, but they were pretty tolerant. Ironically, it was a bit more tolerant before Trump ran for office.
Right. Yeah.
For some reason, I think that things had been polarized at that point, but Trump just took it to another level. So as a libertarian conservative, they were fairly tolerant, and that was maybe a less radical viewpoint also. That was sort of before nationalism came to the center. But no, they were fairly tolerant.
I think you kind of hinted who has the power to silence someone like you. But can you kind of give me an organizational chart of influence as you see it?
Sure. So I frequently talk about how the United States has a oligarchy. And maybe it's important to understand how power works in America. When people think about power, they think about government. They think about the president, they think about Congress, they think about elections and elected officials. But I think anybody that spends any amount of time thinking about this.
Chat, let me know if you have anything to say about Nick. If you agree with him, disagree with him, let me know in the comments, chat. I want to hear from you guys at the end of the day. My page is, I'm not pushing an agenda on anybody. I'm not here to, push out any ideas from left or right. I'm just here to, give you guys the interview, but at the same time, I want to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comments, chat. Hit that like button as well if you're watching. Thank you so much. It helps me out a lot. Thank you. Let's get back into the video.
Situation understands that there's a tremendous power of money in politics, because an elected official like the president has to raise $1 billion every 4 years. And who has the money to spend every 4 years $50 million, $100 million, without actually a tangible or direct return on investment? Maybe it's something qualitative, maybe it's something hard to calculate. It's not like, for example, buying a factory. Investing $100 million to buy influence is less tangible. Well, the answer is simple. It's billionaires. Billionaires have hundreds of millions of dollars to spend every 4 years. And you can go on Open Secrets and you can look at the top 10 individual contributors per cycle, and it's fairly consistent. It's people like Miriam Adelson. This cycle, it was Elon Musk, Tim Mellon, Reid Hoffman, a number of others. And so you have to understand about politics that it's a money system.
Yeah, chat. That's true, because I never in my life knew that you could fund a campaign. And my whole life, I never knew that you could fund a whole campaign, chat, until like these last 2 terms. Like, I found out that people were just like funding campaigns and spending millions of dollars, billions of dollars. From Kamala spent like billions of dollars. Trump spent like $500 million. You feel me? At the end of the day, who funded those campaigns? You know what I'm saying? You got to ask those type of questions. And at the end of the day, chat, I'm not one of them. You feel me? I never sent a fucking dollar to a politician in my life, chat. I never even voted. My whole life as an American citizen, chat, I never used my right as an American citizen to vote. Not because, not because I don't know. It's so many things. Sometimes I decided not to vote. Sometimes I just felt like it just didn't matter. Sometimes I didn't like the people who were in it. You know what I'm saying, chat? But at the end of the day, you feel me? I'm sincerely not one of those people who funded a campaign. I didn't even vote for one, chat. So the people who do support these campaigns and fund these campaigns and spend money on these campaigns, they're helping a certain politician win. You feel me? And at the end of the day, chat, you end up buying a person through your money by funding them.
Politics is controlled by money. And what does the money buy? Well, it buys favorable regulatory oversight. It buys favorable treatment in a particular jurisdiction, in a particular state, or from the federal government. And so to create an organizational flow chart, I would say something like this. You've got Congress and the presidency. They actually have to answer to their billionaire donors. Where do billionaires come from? Billionaires come from industries like Silicon Valley, Wall Street. Where do those people come from? Somebody at Silicon Valley comes from Stanford University. Where are all the big Silicon Valley founders and entrepreneurs from? They all come from Stanford University, which is the premier college that's in that area. And so you understand that it's a intelligentsia, academic, money, and political system. And once you understand that we have a system that isn't primarily about elections, then you maybe begin to understand how influence is actually exercised in the country. And I would say that for the most part, people's understanding of politics is basically correct. I think what they get wrong is they don't see how particular groups or special interests will try to control the bottlenecks or particular choke points in the system. So, for example, a lot of people talk about AIPAC, American Israel Public Affairs Committee, and they like to say, well, when you look at the biggest contributors, the biggest lobbies in politics, AIPAC doesn't tend to show up. Well, why is that? It's how AIPAC operates. AIPAC doesn't actually do a lot of direct giving to a particular politician. But what they do is they manage a number of different billionaires or high-level millionaires and their political giving. So they'll find the candidate they like, and if that person pledges allegiance to Israel, they'll pick up the phone and they'll call their group of donors, and all those donors will give as individuals. This way it doesn't show up on the paperwork. This is one of the ways it's concealed and obfuscated. Moreover, in the last cycle in 2024, AIPAC marshaled $100 million to spend. Now, in the grand scheme of things, that's not a ton of money, actually, because billions of dollars are spent across all the different elections, presidential election, congressional elections. But what did AIPAC do specifically? They singled out every congressman that voted against foreign aid to Israel last April, some progressives and one Republican, Thomas Massie. They funneled $100 million, a lot of that money, into those particular races. They funded primary candidates that would take the nomination from the incumbents. And so, for example, in Massachusetts and other states, you had progressive Democrats that took the nomination from an incumbent Democrat congressman. And what they do by focusing on, let's say, a handful of races, singling out, isolating the 3 or 4 congressmen and women that voted against, they make those people lose the election. What they do is create a chilling effect. They don't have to spend millions of dollars in every race. If they spend it in 3, everybody else gets the message. Which is they could single you out. They could target you. So a lot of people say it's just not worth the trouble. And this is how you can have AIPAC rally resources in just a few districts, but send a message to all of Congress, which is, if you go against us, if you go against Israel, you will lose your seat. So there's this process of refinement. It's not to say that everybody in Congress is necessarily being bribed to the tune of millions of dollars, but everybody knows the score, which is that in order to be in Congress, you have to pass that check. If you don't, you might be dealing with $20 million from AIPAC funding a primary challenger in your district. And that's just sort of one example of how they'll take a bottleneck or a choke point and a very determined, motivated, organized, powerful group can have an outsized and disproportionate amount of influence.
This feels like a very Gen Z blunt question to ask, but like, why do they even want to be in Congress? Like, why does Trump even want to be president if he can't like really enact real change? Like, is it just a money motivation that they have access to?
That's sort of an interesting question, because everybody assumes that corruption is all about money.
Right.
A lot of people think that someone like Donald Trump or the politicians, they are there for their own personal enrichment. They're getting paid off. The rich get richer. But I think it's deeper than that. What they really are after is power. And somebody like Donald Trump or a congressperson, everybody wants to be the king of the hill. Everybody that's in Congress or in the Senate, they want to be the president one day.
Rod and
they
roll.
What is it,
Shout out
implied
Rod and
power?
roll. Thank you so much. There you content. Thank you so much. Shout out to you. Thank you so much for tuning in, brother. Like the stream if you're watching, bro. Shout out to you, Rod and roll. Thank you so much for tuning in. You back at it.
Or is it actual power?
It's actual power.
Okay.
And there's sort of a deal that's made, which is they know that they don't have absolute power. So, for example, a Trump will need buy-in from powerful factions in the country. How does he get to be the president? He's going to need buy-in from Wall Street, from Silicon Valley. He needs their backing. And there's a trade-off that's made. I'll scratch your back if you make me president. If I get to be king, I'll give you favorable treatment. So Trump is not going to have true absolute power, personal power over everything, but he might have personal power as president to reward his friends and punish his enemies. He's going to be the king of the hill for 4 or 8 years. He'll have his legacy. That's a very powerful motivator that I don't think people give enough serious consideration.
Nick, if you could make one government agency disappear overnight.
Yeah, chat. At the end of the day, if you're in the politic game, and if somebody donates you 100 million or 10 million or helps you get into power, one way or another, you're gonna want to repay them back, or you will have to repay them back. You know what I'm saying? They put you in a position. Now it's time for you to pay that favor back to them. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of the times, chat, they help you get into the door, but you gotta do some grimy things in the back end, just to reward these people who got you through the door, chat. So it's something you gotta think about, and this goes for any powerful person in the world, not just in America, not just in the UK, everywhere in the world, chat.
Which would it be?
I would probably make the FBI disappear overnight. I would, to be honest, I would take a lot of the intelligence agencies. I'd take all of them put together and get rid of them overnight.
Why?
Because every single one of them is completely infiltrated by foreign agents. And I think that the United States should have an intelligence service, and we need a federal law enforcement. So you need something like an FBI. You need something like a CIA. But the problem is that all of the federal law enforcement and intelligence, which maybe have the most freedom of action, they have arguably the most raw power out of anybody in the country, over generations, they have all been systematically infiltrated by various nation states. A good example is our national security advisor, Mike Waltz. Now, this is not strictly speaking part of the intelligence apparatus, but it's maybe the most egregious example in the national security state.
The W Monster Energy drink. Let me know, hey, brothers, let me know in the comments. This first time I put Nick Fuentes on my channel, chat. Let me know if this is the type of content you guys like to watch, bro. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, chat. At the end of the day, I'm just here to please you guys. You feel me? I'm not here to push an agenda, so don't take it that way. Thank you so much for tuning in, though.
Mike
LCV8525 said, hi, hey, how you doing, brother? You know what I'm saying? Welcome to the stream, chat. Welcome to the stream. Please hit that like button. It helps me out a lot. Thank you so much.
Waltz is the national security advisor. He creates the briefings and the plans and all of the memos for the president on national security. So anything concerning war, terrorism, proliferation of WMD, he creates that briefing. He informs the president.
Chat, y'all gotta know my channel is based. You feel me? I tuning into anything. You know what I'm saying? I don't really have to agree with it, or I don't really gotta have to agree with it, or I could agree with it, or somewhat in between. I don't care. This is just a stream, guys. You know what I'm saying? Let me know in the comments what y'all want to see, any questions or whatever. Let me know. You feel me? Tap in. You still living in Thailand? I'm currently living in Mexico, brother. I'm in Mexico living, bro. Thank you for... Damn, bro, you be tuning in with my videos for sure. Now, I'm gonna go back to Thailand, though, soon, bro.
Trump appointed Mike Waltz. Mike Waltz was fired 3 months after he got the job because he was texting Bibi Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, on an encrypted Israeli messaging app. And they believed that he was actually working on behalf of Netanyahu to push the United States into a war with Iran. So when you have that kind of corruption at the highest levels of the most important organs of the government, the national security state, you have to start from scratch. You don't know who's working for who. You have to fire everybody and then rebuild all of it with loyal Americans, people that it's unambiguous are working for the United States of America.
Senators Ted Cruz and Mitch McConnell denounce you. Vice President J.D. Vance says that you're a total loser, disavows you, and you're not part of the MAGA movement. Do you think they're embarrassed by you, or do you think they're afraid of you?
They are afraid of what I represent, which is what has happened with MAGA It started out as a revolutionary movement. What was the message of MAGA? It was America first, Americanism, not globalism. And deeper than that, Trump said, when I get elected in 2016, he said, we are going to throw out all the super PACs, all the lobbyists, all the global banks, the global special interests. People forget how radical that first campaign was. And then immediately, once Trump won the election, all the interests came in. The Republican Party filled the White House with their personnel. The special interests like Sheldon Adelson, like Ken Griffin from Citadel on Wall Street, all the interests poured in, and they gradually and slowly captured Trump, Mar-a-Lago, MAGA, and they made the Trump movement serve the GOP and their special interests, such that by 2020, Trump was unrecognizable. At 16, he said, we're going to end foreign wars. We're going to build a wall. We're going to end free trade. In 2020, he was bragging about moving Israel's embassy to Jerusalem, lowest black unemployment in history, cut the corporate tax rate by over 10%. It was a completely different campaign. And what I represent, I not only represent the young people, but I represent the actual promise of the original Trump revolution. Realizing America first, Americanism, not globalism. And so you have people like Ted Cruz or J.D. Vance. They see MAGA as effectively a form of a Trojan horse. It looks like and is dressed up like something new, something different, something unconventional that actually challenges power. In reality, now that Trump has been elected the second time, it's a true Trojan horse. What awaits inside the Trump movement is lobbyists. Inside of it is the corporate interest. That's why Trump gets elected. He buries the Epstein files. He bombs Iran. He extends the corporate tax cuts. If somebody like myself is able to have a platform, then we will expose how MAGA has been corrupted. And then potentially in 2028, we might get another crack at actually having a populist takeover of.
Chat. Let me know what you guys think about what he just said. If you're a person who supports MAGA, what do you think? What's your take on that? You know, do you think he's onto him? Do you think he's just spreading some bullshit narrative, or do you agree with it? It doesn't matter what you are. You're welcome in my channel. If you're a person who's in the right wing or in the left wing, if you're in the middle, I don't give a fuck, chat. You know what I'm saying? All of you guys are welcome in my channel. Let me know down below what y'all think.
Of the GOP. They would be happy if people would pretend that Trump of 2024 is the same as Trump of 2016, so that it's going to protect their grift. That's why they don't like me.
Yeah, to be honest with you, Nick, I did some deep research on you because I kind of had the same suspicion that Tucker says he has about maybe you being a Fed. But I asked pretty much the only person I would trust about this answer, and he said he'd had some conversations with you. I can't dox him, but it's a very wealthy fellow, and he basically implied to me that you can't be bought and you can't be blackmailed in the same way that maybe someone like Trump could be, which is a reason that I think your message is considered so dangerous, is because they know they can't really get to you. But as far as Trump, like, what do you think was the moment that he became compromised? Or do you think he ever truly wanted like a genuine MAGA?
I think that Trump is not an ideological force. And if you pay very close attention to the things that he says, it's very clear that his skill set is in marketing and campaigning. He knows how to play to an audience. He knows how to give people what they want. And I think what happened in 2016 is that he identified that there was a need that had to be filled, which is to say that the Republican base was very clear about what they wanted. They were mad about the cultural transformation of the country. That's why they really didn't like Obama. So Trump came out with a message that said, we're going to make America great again. We're going to say Merry Christmas again. We're going to take all the illegals and get them out. And we're going to blame China for taking our jobs. He knew the message that people wanted to hear. He effectively pandered and is a true demagogue in that sense. And then once he got elected, I'll never forget there was something very specific he said in 2017. He did one of his first rallies after winning the presidency, and his audience started chanting, "Lock her up," about Hillary Clinton. And Trump, responding to the chant, said, "Well, that's something that plays good before the election," he said. And in that, he gave away the whole game, which is, did he really want Hillary Clinton to face justice? No, there was never any intention to put Hillary Clinton in jail. He knew that saying that would help him win, saying that would endear him to the voters. Once he was elected, he realized that's not going to be politically acceptable. That will not be tolerated by the system. And so he wasn't going to stand on business and actually fight for accountability, no matter what it cost him, politically speaking. He said, well, if that's inconvenient, then I just won't do it. And so he sort of gave away the game. I think that from the beginning, it was always about him becoming president. And that's why his politics have changed so much, so wildly over the years, whether it was the 90s, the 2000s, 2010s, 2020s. You get a different Trump in every decade. So I think at the end of the day, it was always about him.
So you would assume that they kind of already had control over him, already had blackmail on him, and he kind of knew that?
I don't
Because
think
I'm not sure what's in the Epstein files. I haven't looked at it too closely. My editor was telling me something about Donald Trump and Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
But yeah, kind of tell me about that, and if you think that Trump is like guilty of that kind of thing, maybe.
With Epstein, I'm skeptical that Trump actually did anything wrong. At least I was very skeptical because by they, I mean the Democrats have been showing the videos and pictures of Trump and Epstein for over a decade. And I really thought that if there was anything there, we would have seen it by now. And there's some truth to this argument that they did everything to stop him in 2016 and 2020 and 24. If there was anything really damning in the files, wouldn't we see it by now?
Yeah, it's like, well, why is this happening now? That's
Right.
my question. Yeah.
They charged him in New York, in Georgia, 2 federal indictments. If he did anything criminal, they would have brought it to light. That being said, Trump does not want the Epstein files to get out, and he's now involved in an active cover-up because he came out with his Department of Justice in July and said there are no Epstein files. They don't exist. There's no emails, no letters, no personal effects. There's nothing left, he said, other than the actual child material, which would show indecent images or photos or videos of the underage girls being abused. Well, we now know that was a lie because, of course, now Congress has compelled the DOJ to release the things they have. And we've seen that there's tens of thousands of emails that are already out there. There'll be tens of thousands of more documents. So now it begs the question, why did Trump lie? Why did the DOJ lie and say there were no files when they knew that the files existed? It would seem to suggest that Trump is in the files. He knows he's in the files, and he's worried about what is in them. Here's another question. If what was in the files about Trump was innocuous, why would he be fighting so hard to keep it suppressed? It might be embarrassing. It might be politically harmful to him. At this point, it's more politically harmful to cover it up. They had to shut down Congress a month early to keep that from coming out. So the question now is, if there is nothing bad in the files about you, because we know you're in them and we know you lied about that, why are you fighting so hard to prevent it from coming out? We almost have to draw a negative inference that there's something in there that he doesn't want to get out because it might be criminal or outrageous or deeply offensive to our conscience. And I would say all you have to do is look at the timeline to consider who might be holding the cards there. Elon Musk, in I think it was June or May, went to the Oval Office for the last time, and it didn't go well. He left the meeting, went on Twitter, and said Trump will not release the Epstein files because he knows he's in them. 1 week later, Israel attacked Iran. This is the war they've wanted for 20 years. Realistically, they've wanted it for 45 years. And every president, from Bush to Obama to Trump to Biden, didn't give it to them. Israel bombed Iran. A week later, Trump bombed Iran. The United States is effectively now in a state of war with Iran. This is what they wanted for half of a century. After the war ends, Netanyahu visits the White House to celebrate that Israel and the United States destroyed Fordo, Iran's nuclear complex. It was the day before that visit that the DOJ produced a memo saying the Epstein files would never be released because they don't exist. So it's bookended from when the Epstein files are brought up as a threat against Trump to when they're buried by the DOJ with the war in Iran. And given that Epstein was potentially Israeli intelligence, I think all signs point to Tel Aviv or Jerusalem controlling those files.
Quick one. Here, Nick and I are talking about corruption in the US government, so if you're someone who distrusts it and has a lot of cryptocurrency, you're going to want to hear about today's sponsor, iTrol. These guys are currently the biggest supporters of this podcast, and when they reached out to me and explained what they did, it literally sounded like a cheat code.
Oh, what's going on, chat? No. You find out. The fuck, chat?
See, for 4K.
Well, I wasn't dramatic, a very original person, but about this. I go on January 6th. And I had already been canceled twice by Daily Wire, then by Turning Point USA. At that point, I had been banned on PayPal. So I was thoroughly canceled at this point. In spite of that, I had almost 100,000 subs on D Live, which was PewDiePie's live streaming platform. I was getting over 10,000 live viewers a night. I was making pretty good money. I was making about $50,000 a month as a completely canceled person. I had a live audience, subscriptions, a good income. I had a big following on Twitter.
Damn.
The week after January 6th, I got banned from D Live. I got banned from my bank that I was at, Bank of America. My checking account was shut down. My money was frozen. All my cash was frozen by the DOJ. I was put on a federal no-fly list. I was banned by my payment processors. I was banned by D Live. So I went from having a career in spite of being canceled, fighting so hard to emerge from that kind of culture, only to, because of J6, 2 weeks later, not even having a website to stream from, having no income, being broke, having no cash. And then, because I was effectively then a loser, because I was so thoroughly deplatformed, many of my friends began to turn on me. And all the other people that were there on January 6th, they feared that maybe they would be a subject of an investigation, maybe they would be deplatformed. So probably 80% of my inner circle completely abandoned me. And so rock bottom looks like that. Broke, no income, no platform, truly banned from everything, betrayed by 8 out of 10 of my friends.
Was there a specific person that kind of cut you off that hurt more than the others?
No, at that point, I was pretty desensitized.
Right.
So no, not in particular.
Nick, you've discussed an uncanny feeling about modern society. Why do you think everything feels off?
Hit that like button, chat, if you're watching. Thank you so much.
Well, I think that everything feels off because we're not living the way that probably most of our ancestors lived. And I'm not a big trad guy or like, so much of what you see on the internet now is this idea. Something went wrong with modernity. We need to return. And so some people say we need a primal diet. We need an ancestral diet. Some people say we need to return to the wilderness and get more in nature, be more environmental or something like that. I think it's social. I think it's all social, which is to say that we're maybe the first generation that is completely atheistic. There's no religion. I think that's maybe unique in the history of mankind because even primitive humanity had animism, believed that gods were in the animals and in objects, or you had pagan barbarians that had their pantheon of gods, and then you had Christians and Muslims. And so we've always been believers. We've always built idols or statues or shrines. This is the first generation that has no connection to the divine, the supernatural. There's no sense that there's anything beyond this plane of existence, beyond death even, waiting for us. That's one. Two,
Chat, really quick, chat. I just gotta comment over that really quick. I feel like that's facts. I really do feel like that's facts, chat. I've met so many people that don't believe in God, and there's a lot of close people that I personally know that used to believe in God, used to go to church, and they stopped believing in God. They stopped believing in a higher power. They stopped believing going to church. Um, Back when I was a kid, a child, my mom used to tell me that everybody around her used to go to church. Everybody around her used to talk about God. My grandma was a hardcore Catholic, chat. Um, all my family members from both my mom and my dad's side of the family are just hardcore, people who believe in God, who believe in Jesus, who are Catholic. Some of them are Christians, and some of them are Jehovah Witnesses, but none of them are uh, atheists. You know what I'm saying, chat? So that's something that I've noticed a pattern, and a lot of people are away from God. My mom told me a few years back when I was a kid. She said, "Bro, like everybody is turning away from God. Like it just looks like every year people are turning away from God more and more and more every time, And God forbid that happens. But at the end of the day, chat, I'm here on my stream, and I want to say this today, chat. Jesus is the truth, the light, and the way. You know what I'm saying? So if I could use my platform to give you guys that word of God, then so be it. At the end of the day, chat, you're welcome to believe anything you want in my platform. I'm not here to put up an agenda, but I will say this. You know what I'm saying? I will say that God saved my life, chat.
is that we have no social fabric either. You look at the families, and when we
Rod and Roll said, the devil is working on them. Stay close to your faith. Thank you, brother. Thank you for tuning in, bro. And thank you for your words, bro. Yes, sir. That's literally what the devil wants. You feel me? At the end of the day, chat, you just gotta have a strong faith nowadays, because at the end, it's so many things out there that make you question your faith. Sometimes I'm away from God myself. Sometimes I question God myself. Sometimes I'm away from God, but then I snap out of it sooner or later. You gotta think, you gotta see the world how it is and be like, bro, ain't no way this shit came about just because. You feel me? There had to be a higher power, a divine power that created all of this, all of us. Just like the internet, chat. You guys are able to see me through the internet, through a screen, and it just didn't automatically happen. Somebody created this shit. Somebody created this world on the internet. You know what I'm saying? So, bro, there's somebody out there, chat. You just gotta go find your truth. At the end of the day, chat, I don't even give a fuck if you're a Muslim or if you're a Hindu. As long as you believe in a higher power, chat, that's all that really matters. You feel me? But if I could tell you this, chat, at the end of the day, I'm not here to tell people what religion is right and which one is wrong, but I will say my religion is Jesus. It's not Christianity, it's not Catholicism, it's Jesus, bro. It's Jesus, period. You feel me? Jesus is my Lord. You feel me? It doesn't have to be, Jehovah Witnesses believe in Jesus. Christians believe in Jesus. Catholics believe in Jesus. You feel me? Muslims believe in Jesus. I believe, like, Jesus is my religion. You feel me? I don't know how I could say that, how I can name it. Shout out to you, Rod and Roll. Thank you so much. Amen. For real.
we think of what is traditional, we think of the nuclear family. And even that is not very traditional. Two parents and their kids. What about grandparents? What about uncles and cousins and big families? Now, if you're lucky, you have two parents and maybe one sibling. That's your family. What's your community? A lot of people don't even know their neighbors. They don't know their next door neighbors. They don't have a ton in common with the people in their community. And so their social life might begin and end in like high school. You're raised by your parents, you go to school, you finish school, then you move into an apartment as a single man or woman, and you go to work. That's your life. This is a completely atomized existence. So we're not connected to the eternal, the transcendent, God. We're also not connected to each other in any meaningful way. People older than us, younger than us. We don't have big families. We don't have large communities or real society where people are rising and falling in connection with each other. And so I think that what really defines the modern age is how alone we all are as individuals. And maybe this is a product of liberalism. Maybe this is a product of the Enlightenment, the Reformation, but we are truly disconnected from maybe our biology, from our souls, and we're disconnected from our families and everybody that coexists with us in time. And I think that's made life very lonely and then therefore very dysfunctional for a lot of people.
I do want to clarify, you said this earlier, you hinted at it, but before we get into your actual views, because I feel like what you've been stating is more so just logical conclusions, observations. Like, why, in your words, Nick, do you think young men trust your voice above everyone else's? And why are you the voice for Gen Z men?
I think people like me because I'm authentic. And authenticity, ironically, has become like a marketing term. Like I see TikToks where people say, how do you market yourself? You have to be authentic. And it's like, well, isn't there something like deeply ironic about that you're like having to be self-consciously authentic to appeal and pander to people? But I think that in particular in politics, everybody is so calculating and so fake and very careful about what they say and trying to appeal to everybody, pander to everybody, try so hard not to offend. And I think that especially after wokeness, and we're maybe getting on the other side of that, people look at me and they find a lot of the things I say offensive or outrageous, or, you know, maybe they don't like certain things about me. But what maybe they all can respect is that good, bad, or ugly, there's no pretense. There's no facade. It's just me. And maybe there is an inherent credibility in that, because if somebody is out there, and you see this all the time, the apology videos, people, they won't even talk about politics for fear of offending one group or the other. They try to straddle the line. You get the sense that you're not really getting that real person. You get the sense that the whole thing is sort of an elaborate performance. And of course, why would we trust somebody that's performing? It raises a natural question, which is, what are they trying to achieve? Is it about fame, money, something like that? If they look at a guy that's really willing to just say anything and everything, or maybe spitefully saying things to piss people off, they say, well, clearly this guy isn't in it for the money or the fame or to climb a political career or any career ladder for that matter. This is somebody that people can relate to. So I think I'm a very relatable person.
I saw last night that you said you represent hope as well, which I found interesting. I think we'll later get into what your hopes are for America and what you actually want to see changed. But so what would you say is more dangerous to the West? TikTok, fentanyl, OnlyFans.
That's crazy, chat.
Well, what they all have in common is they're all adaptive. People get on fentanyl and they use pornography and they use TikTok, really all for the same reasons. Do people really like TikTok? If you doom scroll for 3 hours, which a lot of people do, and somebody stopped you and said, can you tell me the second to last TikTok that you watched and what it was about? Most people couldn't tell you. And they'll watch hours and hours of this content. Why? Boredom, monotony, which is truly painful, meaninglessness. I think people use pornography for really the same reason. Doom scrolling and the use of internet pornography are kind of the same too. It's the same kind of dopamine hit, the same kind of roulette feeling that you get flipping through TikTok or that you get looking through pornography. Sort of the same thing. I think a lot of people use pornography maybe because they're bored. I think the same is also true of all drugs, whether it's fentanyl or even marijuana. It's the same thing. Everybody is bored. Chasing. Everybody feels a sort of hollowness, lack of something. As far as what is the most dangerous, I mean, of course, fentanyl is the most deadly. I would say that the most poisonous, however, would be OnlyFans. Because what OnlyFans does to the men that use it and the women that are involved in it, that are creating it, is it takes away their innocence, their soul. And if the solution to many of these problems of modernity is to rediscover each other, relationships with each other, a meaningful relationship with a wife, a husband, a meaningful relationship with God, OnlyFans is really the only thing that might permanently sever that relationship by debasing and degrading and humiliating people, because that's really what that is. And maybe taking away what makes love and sex special between human beings.
Rod and Roll said TikTok would be the most useful out of the three. Music artists use it as a major tool, not for sure. Yeah, I would say from worst to best would be, you know, of course, fentanyl, how he said is the deadliest one. OF is poison. You feel me? It really messes up your life to a certain extent. Of course, fentanyl ruins your life, but it could kill you. Like, it could instantly kill you. You know what I'm saying? So it's not something that it could really fuck up your life, but eventually you'll end up dead. OF, on the other hand, it won't kill you, but it will turn you into an empty person, you know? And what I mean from that is, like, you know, it will turn you away from God, as how he says. You know, sometimes, including myself, Chad, you know what I'm saying? I'm not going to come on here and lie. You know, it's just like, not OF in general, but like, you know, pornography and shit, and like OF and shit like that. You know, it really messes up a man's mind. And at the end of the day, you know, it interferes with your relationship with God. Sometimes you're just like, you know what, like, bro, like, why am I tapping in with God? Like, bro, I just sinned, you feel me? Like, my eyes just sinned, you feel me? I sinned with myself. So it makes you feel ashamed. Another thing is, like, you know, it could probably ruin your relationship, you feel me? Or it could probably, like, stop you from chasing a relationship with a woman, you feel me? It could probably stop you from having a family, you know what I'm saying, Chad? So that's that. You gotta agree with this, you feel me? I know Nick is a very controversial person, but he's very smart, you feel me? And he's smart with what he says in order to get attention, because he says, I feel like he says controversial shit in order for him to, like, reach and blow up and go viral from all the dumb shit that he says. But at the same time, bro, he's an intelligent person, bro. You feel me? It doesn't matter the views or anything. At the end of the day, chat, I'm just gonna speak some facts. You know what I'm saying? I'm not here to, how I said, push an agenda. But at the end of the day, bro, you gotta agree with that. You feel me? Rod and Roll said fent is used in modern medicine. I didn't know that. I didn't even know it was used in modern medicine. For real? I don't think so. I mean, because they say like a tiny speck of it could kill you. So it's like, how is it used on modern medicine? You feel me? Like, you wouldn't be able to use that. Like, you like, if you barely use like a 0.005 or some shit of a gram, like, it kills you. So how is it used on modern medicine, bro? If you can elaborate with me, bro. But yeah, I mean, I would be against those top two. TikTok is entertaining, Chad. You know what I'm saying? You could find useful information, but you could also find brain rot. So it's a sword with like two. How the fuck do you say it? It's a sword with two it's double sided. I don't know how to say it in English. In Spanish, es un cuchillo con doble filo. You feel me? Meaning it has good things and bad things. You feel me? So let's get back into the video, chat.
What connects, how that connects us to each other. So I think that maybe OnlyFans is the most insidious because it's the most damaging to the soul in a way that TikTok and fentanyl are not.
What's the biggest moral challenge facing young men today?
I would say when you look at the young men, it's such a sad state of affairs because there truly is just a general amorality,
hit that like button, chat,
meaning that
thank you so much.
People don't look at the world through a moral lens. If they have one, it's some vague idea that the only sin is to hurt another person. in like a direct way. So there's this idea, as long as you aren't hurting anybody, it's fine. And so people will act like complete hedonists and degenerates with drugs, with sex. They steal. They don't have any kind of sense of obligation or responsibility. And I guess maybe that's the biggest moral failing by itself. You know, there's that famous line, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled is convincing the world he does.
What's that, bro? Welcome back to the channel, bro. Welcome back, bro, to the stream. Today we tuning in with Nick Fuentes, bro. Grab your popcorn, sit back, and let me know something in the comments, bro. You know what I'm saying? We already got you know what I'm saying, the chat popping with my brother Rod and Roll. You know what I'm saying? Let me know a little something.
Doesn't exist, and it's this idea that there is no evil. There is no such thing as right and wrong. And I think maybe that's the primary problem, because if you think that, if you go through life thinking that as long as I'm not hurting anybody else, I can smoke weed all day and I could be kind of a burnout and I could go and hook up with no consequences and be a degenerate. Well, then people are going to feel complete license to do that, whatever the variety of that sin is going to be. So I think that people need to, in particular young men, they need to start to listen to their conscience and really.
Rod and Roll said AI overview. Yes. Fentanyl is widely used in modern medicine as a powerful prescription pain medication and anesthetic, according to Google. Wow, I didn't know that, bro. I really didn't know that. AR Mark said, love these videos. Thank you for being based. Brother, I've always been based. Thank you so much. Rod and Roll said, my sister went under a major surgery a few years ago, and I'm almost positive I saw fentanyl. Damn, for real? That's crazy, bro. That's crazy. That's crazy, bro. I mean, I don't know how she didn't get addicted to it though, but that's crazy. That's a crazy fact. I didn't even know that, bro. Thank you so much for educating me on this.
Be guided by, I think, what we all know is right and wrong. You know, when we do these various things, we don't feel good about it, actually. I don't think anybody smokes a bunch of weed and lives that lifestyle and really feels good about it deep down, you know, or a very sexually promiscuous lifestyle. I don't think anyone really feels good about that. So I think that the young men have to start to listen to their conscience and return back to our church, which is the Christian church.
On the flip side, what's something about Gen Z you genuinely admire?
I think that Generation Z there is a sense of a social consciousness that the boomers did not have. And even if it's misguided, there's still something redeeming about it. So take, for example, Greta Thunberg. She gets clowned on by the right because she's a bleeding heart liberal. You know, she says, how dare you? How absolutely dare you? But she is somebody who is thinking globally and socially. What about the climate? What about posterity? Will our children and grandchildren have ecology? Will they have a clean and beautiful environment? Are the resources we're harvesting sustainable? They have this forward-thinking social global consciousness about that, even about race issues. And everyone knows where I stand on race. But even you know, bleeding heart liberals as far as race goes, there is this concern for how we're going to get along as a society that I think that the boomers didn't have. I think that the Gen Xers, the baby boomers, less so the millennials, they're a very selfish generation. You know, you hear about boomers that are going to die and they say they're not going to leave any inheritance to their children. They say, I got kicked out at 18, so my kids can figure it out. It's like, is it really all about you? You want to either blow all your money, or even if you don't, you're not going to give your kid an inheritance. There are also people that really had no civic engagement either. You know, 80s and 90s were a big party, was a great time. Meanwhile, the country was becoming very corrupt. There was a lot of apathy about politics. So I think that's maybe the one redeeming thing about Gen Z is they really are a socially conscious generation. They're like anything else. There's a virtue in that, even if it's misguided.
Why do you
no cap, chat. Gen Z, I'm Gen Z myself, chat, and man, you feel me? I gotta speak on my people. We the most based generation, you feel me? And I feel like a lot of us got different opinions, but a lot of us ain't brainwashed to some certain extent. You feel me? We all get our information from some type of source that our all the other previous generations weren't able to, like, find that type of source, because a lot of these people were brainwashed from the news, from books, or whatever. But now we have like Twitter, we have TikTok, and we have YouTube, and we have a bunch of things where we could get a bunch of facts from. Some of them are very wild, some of them are very woke, some of them are very far right. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because it's a different type of view that we're getting. It's a different type of information that we're gaining. You feel me? AI, we also get information from AI, So we have an open mind. You feel me? We have a mind of our own. Yes, to some extent, we are being brainwashed, but it's a different type of brainwash. It's a little bit different. It's not like everybody else. You feel me? It ain't like my mom was one of those parents who thought weed was like the worst drug ever. You feel me? And every other person who was like this similar age from like my mom also thought that weed was like the worst. Everybody was indoctrinated in a certain type of way. You feel me? But now, there's some people who still have those same beliefs as my mom. There's some people who be like, hey, look, weed is a medicine. And there's some people who are like, hey, weed is alright, or some people be like, hey, nah, weed makes me feel good. So now you have a little bit of, you have all types of realms, you feel me, around that. But yeah. Bro said, I'm eating some ham right now, bro. Damn, bro. Happy Thanksgiving to all my viewers, bro. Sadly, you guys know I'm in Mexico. I got a little CL water, you feel me? This really my whole Thanksgiving meal. I had some wings, though. There was some wings. In this little town, they sell a little bit of wings, but man, bro, I wish I had some fucking pumpkin pie, some sweet potato casserole, some ham, man, some tomato. Man, I ain't even want to talk about that, bro. I'm going
I think
sad.
Gen Z women are obsessed with astrology.
Oh, man. I don't know. I mean, I'm the wrong guy to ask about women because I don't really talk to women.
Right.
But the astrology thing, to me, people are not taking it seriously enough, because first of all, astrology is real. If you're a Catholic, if you're a Christian, this is actually part of our tradition. Astrology is all over the Bible. And the reason as Catholics we can't engage in astrology is because there's something real about it. Mm-hmm. And to engage in it is to attempt to thwart God's plan.
Right.
It's to sort of say that we are masters of fate, and if we can learn the secrets of the universe, we can control our destiny, when God controls our destiny, and that's why we appeal to God. So astrology is real. And going by another word, you can call this witchcraft, paganism. And going back to the conversation about modernity, people know that atheism is false.
Chat, really quick, I had to tune in with this because I'm huge on this. I'm very huge on this. Astrology is a very interesting topic for me. Like I feel like it's very it makes it like I love to question astrology. I love to question stars. I love gazing at the stars, chat. Right here where I'm at, my little town. I don't live in a big city out here in Mexico. I live in a small town. And, there's not too many lights out here. So it's like I'm able to see, like, the stars. You feel me? And so, Brother-in-law said brazy. Bro, this is one thing I know about astrology. I know it's evil. And the reason I also know it's evil because on the book of Enoch is not on the Bible, Well, it's not on our Bible, at least, on the King James Bible. But the book of Enoch talks about how God pretty much when he sent out the fallen angels, when he cursed the fallen angels and he sent them out to earth, which those fallen angels were in one way or another demons, you feel me, you could say, because they're fallen angels. Anyways, they seen our woman, you feel me, our human woman, and they seen them with lust, and they did their thing with them, and these women started to have babies with these fallen angels, and these fallen angels, the babies of these fallen angels were the Nephilims, you feel me, which were giants. and these giants were seen as gods. These big ass giants. I believe in giants more than I believe in dinosaurs. I really don't believe in giant dinosaurs, chat. But these giants, which were the Nephilims, they were roaming Earth a couple thousand years ago. I don't know how long, but these in the book of Enoch it says that these giants they taught humans witchcraft. They taught humans astrology. They taught humans secrets of the world. And I feel like these Nephilims, these giants, were the reason why the pyramids were made. You feel me? In Egypt, why the pyramids were made out here where I live in Mexico, where the pyramids were made out there in Peru, where the pyramids, or like Easter Island or over there in the UK. You feel me? Like I feel like giants were the reason that we're moving all these stones and creating all these, mysterious things that are in the world, and then, God made the flood a couple years later, and, these Nephilims died, and I feel like they found the bones, but there's no bones. They claim that there are bones out there, but they never show us the bones, and I feel like these bones were grabbed and then they turned them into dinosaurs. They just claim to say that they're dinosaurs. I don't know, chat. I'm just stating that. I really, it's just my theory though. You know what I'm saying? Rod and Roll said facts. That's what I feel. That's who I feel created the pyramids. I feel like it was the Nephilims, chat. I feel like it was giants. According to the book of Enoch. I'm just going by the book of Enoch, And in the book of Enoch, they taught humans astrology, you feel me? And the secrets of the world and of the universe. And so God didn't like that. God thought that was evil. And so he wiped them all out, But humans were looking at the Nephilims as if they were gods, And it also seen, if you see the pyramids, like you could see that they were drawing big ass fucking people, which were seen as gods, That's just my theory.
And so what we're getting is not really...
Chat, hit that like button if you're watching the stream, if you like what I'm saying. Let's get back to the video, though.
A society without God. It's just a society with different gods. And so now there's a new age upon us where there is interest in the supernatural. There is interest in higher powers and maybe invisible forces. But without the guidance of the church, because the church is out of fashion, now people are looking...
A lot of people, I'm just going to say it right now, I don't know if he's going to say it, but I feel like AI is one of those people.
Everywhere else. And they're looking into political ideologies, Gnosticism, witchcraft, paganism. They're looking into their tribal gods. Many of the white nationalists are really getting into like Apollo and Zeus. And on the other side, on the left, they're getting into witchcraft. And I think it needs to be basically eradicated from society. I think it's very evil.
Do you think numerology is real as well?
I do.
Yeah.
Really?
I do.
It's something I've looked into.
It's evil too.
It's really fascinating. It feels like one of the people's thing with astrology and numerology.
Chat, if you're watching, let me know some facts. Let me know some facts about these religions. If you practice any of these, I'm still in tune. I want to get to know about this. And if you have some sort of opinions about it, let me know in the comments, chat.
Manifestation is that it's also general, like it's not actually real, but like when I look into it, I don't know. I see some very specific similarities that make it feel real. And I'm Christian as well, so I know that I won't ask you this, but just my personal belief is like, I do think that there's something there that if you do it in a way that it's aligned with God, it's probably okay, but do you not see it as aligned with God in general?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Jesus didn't do it, so it's like...
Exactly, right.
Do you think women should have fewer rights than men?
Generally speaking, yes. And I don't really love the rights. Rights is a very modern concept, and I think it's ideological. So I believe in human rights. I think everybody should have human rights, which is to say we should be able to speak our minds. We should have the freedom of conscience. We have rights to not be abused by the government. We have a right to a trial, a hearing with the jury of our peers. to me, these are all fine and well, but typically people are starting to conflate that with the privileges of influence in a democratic society. So voting rights is the big one. We have a right to vote. Now, this is treated like an absolute, but why? Does it really make sense that everyone has an absolute right to vote? Do children? Does a 5-year-old have a right to vote? You say, well, obviously not. Well, why? Because a 5-year-old doesn't know enough? Because they're not rational? Because they're not developed? Oh, okay, so it's not completely absolute. We have to draw some lines. What about somebody that has mental problems? That person, should like a schizophrenic person have a vote? Probably not. Maybe not. I would go further than that. When you look at the founders and the framers of the Constitution, there was only one office that was directly elected by anybody, and that was the House of Representatives. The president was chosen by electors, and the electors actually made the decision. It wasn't a vote. The Senate was chosen by the state legislatures. So out of all the federal government, the Supreme Court, the president, the Senate, only the House was actually elected by voters. And who voted? Well, it was landowning, propertied white men. Now, I don't know that I would go back to that, but the idea of it is that we don't want to actually have mob rule. We don't want to live in a society where it is just subjected to the passions of all the people put together. Because if that happens, society might change too rapidly. Society might be given to the mood of the moment and do something rash that might undermine the foundations of society. And so when you look at something like voting rights, I don't actually think it's a good idea, let's say, for a husband and wife to be voting against each other in an election. I think that kind of gets away from the society we want to have. Generally speaking, though, I do think that women should have rights in general.
Yeah, the word rights is very weird because it's, from a Christian perspective, it's like, oh, you have the right to have an abortion, and Christians see that as murder. So it's like you have the right to murder. I don't know. It's like not all rights are good for you necessarily. And there's also the whole thing about, I think you had to serve in the military. Originally, that was like the original reason for a vote. Maybe not in America, but in other countries. Is that the case?
Yeah. So, well, because, and a lot of it, there's like a deep conversation about that. But the idea is if you're going to be conscripted to fight in a regular army, in a standing army, then you should have a say over what your government does. That's a big reason why they lowered the voting age to 18, because if you could be drafted, you should be able to vote. But we just now have this universal suffrage. I think it's a horrible situation.
Nick, why do you think dating women is gay?
Well, here's what I think is gay. It is gay to date women. Here's what's gay about it. What's gay about it is that, when I think about relations between men and women, it's about sex. All of my views about men and women come down to the biological imperative, which is that when a man and woman reach the age of sexual maturity, they want to have sex. According to Catholic sexual morality, the only way to have sex is within marriage. That's what makes it moral. Because to have sex is to have kids. Unless there's something wrong with you. To have sex is to have kids. Kids need a mother and a father that are going to stick together. So the way that you build a stable society is to say the mother and the father are going to have to be together before they have kids and have sex. They're going to have to be made one flesh. They're going to have to, that's their obligation to their children. That's our obligation to God. And so my view of sex and in the United States is people should be getting married younger. Because what they're doing now is they're going out and they're having a lot of hookups or having a lot of casual sex, which I don't think anybody's really, in the end, deeply satisfied with this arrangement. So people reach the age of sexual maturity. They want to have sex. They go out and have lots of sex. And they wait maybe 5, 10, 15 years. They wait until they're in their mid-20s, late 20s, 30s, before when the women are past their prime in looks, they wait for men to really have all their ducks in a row. Then finally, now we want to have kids. And what happens? Well, at that point, the women aren't particularly fertile. Maybe they're only going to have a couple of kids. And also at that point, maybe both of them have had a lot of sexual partners and they've become maybe bitter, cynical, set in their ways. They haven't grown together. It makes it less likely they'll stay together. This is a very dysfunctional situation. And so my prescription for men and women is get married a lot younger when they reach that biological age of maturity, and then they're supposed to have kids. Then when the men and women are young and energetic, that's when they're having a big family and they can take care of a big family because they have energy. And then they grow together. They mature and grow into adults together, and they're more likely to stay together. The reason that dating is gay is because it's sterile. There's something very sterile about dating. Men are using condoms. What's gayer than using a condom? Preventing your virile seed from impregnating a woman, not to sound graphic, but like that's very gay. It's gay for a woman to be on birth control and like denying the creation of life. It's gay for men and women to be not married, but texting each other all day and watching Disney movies and cuddling together and, playing this sort of game throughout college and then into early adulthood. Will they or won't they? Am I going to get married? Maybe we'll live together. I think the whole thing is just deeply unserious and just very kind of juvenile and immature. And I think that it kind of reflects like arrested development. It's like a stunted growth and maturity. So,
Chat, let me know what y'all think about this. Like, do y'all really agree with this, Chat? Y'all really think that?
I think, I'm not saying that getting married to a woman's gay. I'm saying that all of this nonsense that surrounds modern dating culture is extremely sterile and unserious and very feminine and very gay.
Nick, do you think people would value your opinions on the nuclear family more if you'd consider starting one?
Total. Yes, they would. Yes, they would. But it's not even the nuclear family. To me, it's just like the family. But and I get that all the time. That's why I say, take it with a grain of salt because I'm a single guy. But I think, though, it actually makes me maybe more objective. Hear me out, because a lot of people say, well, you're not married and this, and that's true. But what you tend to find, and I see this all the time, is the married guys or guys with a long-term girlfriend, they're afraid of their woman. And so they know when they go on the podcast, they're looking at themselves through their girlfriend's eyes. And that's why they go and they say things like, a real man makes his wife happy. And it's like, okay, she wanted you to say that, So I'm free. I don't, I can say things that offend women because I don't have to go back to my wife with her hands on her hip. Like, what did you just say on your show? So maybe it makes me a little more objective.
Didn't Tucker say like happy wife, happy life was a very good philosophy to live by?
He said it unironically. I couldn't believe it.
Do you think his wife was happy to hear that?
Oh, yeah. She gave him head pats for that. She loved that. Nick,
what's the strangest DM or email you've ever received?
Oh, I've got a lot. There's a lot of crazy stuff I've gotten. I get the weirdest stuff I get is like political manifestos. There's a lot of crazy people in this country. People underestimate that. And when you become famous, especially in politics, the craziest people in the world all think you're the captive audience. And so I get like packets of political manifestos, people talking about taking over the government and, all kinds of crazy stuff. I would say that's maybe the most deranged. I've had a lot of like schizophrenic people, and they think they know me in real life. They think that we're like, I don't even want to say specific details. Some people think they're in a relationship with me and we're like getting married. And I'm like, I have no idea who you are. So there's a lot of weird people out there.
Yeah, I'm guessing you might have some stories that you haven't shared online because you don't want to encourage it. But,
yes.
Nick, who are your top 5 favorite artists?
Well, I'm not a very artistic person. I wish I was more artistically inclined, but Ye has got to be my number one. Best music, best fashion, best everything. And then musical artists only?
We can do music.
Okay.
Or if you want to mention a certain Austrian painter.
My favorite visual artist. I don't know. I mean, I'm not into the visual arts. I mean, I guess I would say Ye would be number one. The music's always it's a question that invites a lot of judgment because you want to sound cool. It's like if you have a bad playlist, people are like, you're corny.
Do you listen to like Bach or
No.
that kind of classical music? No?
No.
80s synth, anything like that?
No,
No.
that's all LARP. That's
Yeah.
LARP. I listen to a lot of indie and alternative.
Hmm.
So I like, what is it, Vacations?
Hmm.
You know them?
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
And who's the other one? Always,
Hmm.
indie group.
Robbie, you know that one? Yeah,
No,
he's
Always?
big into the indie music.
Yeah. Is that a girl or is that a band?
I think it's a group.
They're great.
Yeah.
I think they're like Scandinavian. Always, Vacations. Provoker is one of my favorites. They're kind of like a goth, like little darker indie. But I like all kinds of stuff. I mean, I had a radio show in high school.
Yeah.
And so I was always a music lover. I really love R&B, the classics like Marvin Gaye and Teddy Pendergrass and the Temptations, Earth, Wind and Fire, stuff like that. I like a lot of the classic rock also. But I really have a big discography on my.
But Ye's the only like rap artist you would say, or?
Well, I like a lot of the 90s stuff.
Yeah.
Wu-Tang Clan and Nas. I don't like really anything after like 2005.
Do you like Eminem?
No, I hate Eminem. His music.
Yeah. Interesting. So Nick, give me one word to describe these people. Kamala Harris.
Coconut. That was genius when she said that. I love that.
JD Vance.
Fat.
Candace.
Dumb.
Andrew Tate.
Based.
Yay.
Genius.
Ben Shapiro.
Jew.
Cookie King.
Sub
Oh my
5.
God.
No, I'm kidding. I can't do that to him. I can't.
Chat,
I can't. Chat. He's a chat.
Vladimir Putin.
Wise.
Xi Jinping.
Wise.
Caesar.
Goat.
Bibi Netanyahu.
Evil.
Donald Trump.
Narcissist.
Anyone else we missed? That'd be a good one.
No, those are the big ones. That's a good list.
Did you buy Trump coin?
No. Did you?
Yeah, I actually made some good money on that, but I think I ended up losing a bit in the end. I was curious, this is very random, but from a game theory political view, like, was that a good move for him to, I don't know, rug America? Like, do you think it made Gen Z happy? Like, do you think people are like, he's based? Like, the boomers didn't care? Like, what did you think of that whole thing? Because no one really talks about the fact that Trump made, like, what, $8 billion off of?
Yeah, that's most of his net worth is Trump coin.
Yeah.
Which is, well, it's emblematic of what he is, which is vaporware. You know, and there's something funny about that because when Trump ran in 2016, the internet subculture that surrounded his campaign was vaporwave. And it was Macintosh Plus, the song, which the genre was all those 80s songs chopped and screwed, you know, slowed down, distorted. And they called it vaporwave because it resembles vaporware, which is these like 80s late stage capitalist products that were advertised and seemed great, but never materialized. And it's so interesting because in 16, vaporwave was the aesthetic. It was the grid, the sun, you know, the synth wave, like you talked about, that all of that was called vaporwave. And Trump obviously represented that because he was of the 80s. He was from the 80s. He's sort of like a old school billionaire from when New York was the center of the world, representing Wall Street and maybe even more than Wall Street, building things, you know, brick and mortar. And what Trump turned out to be is the ultimate vaporware. You know, this promise of a return to the 80s that never materialized. And so there's like a very deep, something very deep philosophically about the whole thing. And then when Trump coin came around, it's like that is the best example of it. Is he a billionaire or is he a scam artist? You know, if his net worth is all built on a crypto rug pull that like Howard Lutnick devised or something like that, then he's kind of a fake. And at the end of the day, nobody cared. So maybe it was worth it for him. Maybe that's just a law of the jungle. You do as much as you can get away with.
Yeah, I am fascinated by how little that is talked about still. But Nick, what was the last good year in America?
The last good year, probably. Oh, that's a difficult question. I would say maybe times were pretty good when I was growing up. A lot of people might set it way back in the past or decades in the past. I still believe that America was a great country up until very recently. I would argue maybe 2007 or 2008, maybe before Obama got elected and the recession. I think that was probably the last great year.
That's when the iPhone became popular too, and everyone was getting iPods. But how about from like a policy point of view?
From a policy point of view, maybe 2000. And here's why. You have to look at the 20th century in this way. You have these major wars in Europe, which is really one war. You have the rise of Germany, which is what creates World War I, World War II. And the United States rises to the occasion and becomes a superpower. But then we're locked in this contest with the Soviet Union. And basically the United States doesn't know the end of war for 70 years. Because we get involved in World War I. Right away, we're in World War II. Then we're fighting on every continent in the Cold War. And what happens in 91 on Christmas is the Soviet Union collapses. And with it, literally the only other world power, the only other great power in the world. Europe is hollowed out. China has not yet begun its rise. Japan arguably had a competitive economy, but no military or anything. And so in 1991, you have what they now call the unipolar moment, which is that the United States enjoys more relative power, a bigger advantage over every other country put together than maybe any country has in history. No other country has had that kind of preeminence. And we made some mistakes in the 1990s. Maybe we were a little too aggressive in Yugoslavia, and there were some other mistakes. We didn't catch the World Trade Center bombing and some other things. But times were pretty good in the 1990s. I think people remember that as a time when we had the luxury of not caring about politics, actually. But what happens after 9/11 is that we begin to squander that advantage. Rather than take the peace dividend, which is we don't have to fight the Soviet Union, we don't have to build a giant nuclear arsenal, we don't have to have a giant military anymore. Rather than take this peace dividend and invest it into America, reinvest in our people, in our infrastructure, in our industry, we start to do the opposite. And so we go to war in Afghanistan. Then we go to war in Iraq. Hundreds of thousands of troops in the Middle East with a dozen strategic objectives. We're going to topple Saddam. Then we're going to build a democracy. Then we're going to do... At the same time, we bring China into the World Trade Organization, literally right around that same time. I think it was the year 2000. And we start to send all the factories over to China. A few years after NAFTA, we start to send all the factories to Mexico and Canada. And so this is the most heartbreaking thing in world history. We won. We won World War I, World War II, World War III with the Soviet Union. How many people died on the shores of Normandy? How many people died in the jungles of Vietnam? Fought so hard, sacrificed so much, stood up in the most paranoid time, Cuban Missile Crisis. We came out victorious. And rather than enjoy the spoils of the war and guarantee a 1,000-year American empire, we blew it. We gave it to China. We just gave it to them. We gave it to Mexico. We gave it to Israel. And what inevitably happens 15 years later is Russia starts to rebuild. China, the 1 billion man empire. And, by the way, it's an anomaly of history that China was so inferior compared to the West for the last 500 years. It was inevitable that China would come back in a big way. Now that we blew our advantage, now we find ourselves desperate, scrambling, trying to rebuild our country fast enough to prevent China from invading Taiwan. And it's a big question mark. There's a lot of uncertainty if we'll even be a country in 50 years. So go figure. You go from having more power, relative power, than any civilization in history, winning a century of nuclear war, only to blow it, and then maybe lose 20 years later. That was the worst policy mistake of all time.
So you'd pinpoint it to 2001?
2001.
I'm a bit surprised at your answer. I thought you might be inclined to say, like, around the assassination of JFK, the formation of the CIA, like kind of the beginning of removing God from the US. Why do you kind of like prefer 2001 over that time period? Because I would guess that your key issue that you see is godlessness. Is that right?
I mean, to me, that's more of a global problem,
Okay.
because it wasn't really, this is truly a symptom of modernity. I think because of technological innovation,
Hit
because
that
of
like button if you're
abundance and
watching.
prosperity, it goes hand in hand. Every time there is an increase in the quality of life, I think people apostatize, people lose the faith. Because it's easier to have faith when you're poor and miserable than when you're rich and happy, when your belly's full, because it's easier to distract yourself and there's less of an urgent need to explain suffering or meaninglessness. So to me, I don't really diagnose that as a specifically American problem. And here's the other thing. America had an opportunity to be reborn, you could say, in that moment. America had the opportunity. That was a true inflection point where history was not, let's say, predetermined. We could have gone anywhere from there. After the 1990s, you really could have had a moment where the country became stronger and fortified itself. And maybe we could have fixed those problems even after 9/11. Look at the approval rating of George W. Bush after 9/11. It was 94%, higher than any president in history. Patriotism, togetherness was at an all-time high. You could even argue that after 9/11, we could have come together and be reborn as a country. But instead, we doubled down on all of our worst impulses: more surveillance, more war, more suspicion, more corruption, more lies about Iraq, more opportunism. So I think that was really the mistake where we might have lost it forever.
What's the darkest part of history that Catholic schools don't teach you?
I can't speak to Catholic school, but because honestly, Catholic education is so poor. The Catholic catechism class. So I didn't go to a Catholic school, but you get catechized. You go to like a separate thing once a week. And, I came out of that not knowing the difference between a Catholic and a Protestant. I mean, it's very poor in terms of religious education. But in terms of what is left out, there's this idea that the schools don't teach the dark stuff about our history. I feel like that's all we get. I feel like all we get is indoctrinated about America's sins and the sins of colonialism and the sins of slavery and the sins of racism. And that's kind of American history class. It's like slavery, then Holocaust, then racism, then we were Islamophobic after 9/11. Of course, there's a much deeper and in my opinion, a better story about where we came from, where this civilization came from. They want to talk about Columbus. What did Columbus discover when he got here? Human sacrifice, cannibalism, barbarism. So they want to say Columbus committed a genocide. Well, first of all, that was mostly done by disease, which could not be helped, the Columbian Exchange. But second of all, they don't talk about, they have this myth of the noble savage, that we got here and everybody was hanging out, smoking tobacco, and we introduced violence to these societies. Or how about they talk about the Mexican cession, that America took all this land from Mexico. Read about the Comanches. Read about what the Comanches did to the Texans in the middle of the 19th century. They went into towns of Texan settlers and they skinned people. They boiled them alive. They set them on fire. I mean, this was savagery that was unheard of in European civilization. And I think that the world order that emerges from World War II is objectively, arguably, the best, most peaceful, most humane world order that ever existed. And don't get me wrong, it's not to say that we've lived up to that. We're hypocrites, and any moral standard makes a hypocrite out of a person. But what emerges from that is the Atlantic Charter, international law. People have human rights. People should have a say in their government. Women should have rights. Prisoners have rights. There are certain things in war that can never be justified, like chemical weapons or genocide. All of that comes out of the world wars of the European powers. Do you think that if China was the preeminent power, that we would have a society based on human rights? I don't think so. And I think the same would be true of the Muslims or the barbarians in Latin America, the indigenous people that were here, or anywhere else for that matter.
I guess if you could force every American to read one book, what would it be?
The Bible.
If I could force an American to read one book, I would force every American to read the biography of George Washington by Henry Cabot Lodge, because I think that people in America have no idea where we come from. And I think the biggest problem is there's such a lack of a sense of civic or personal responsibility. America was built by truly the finest men. People like George Washington, John Adams, Alexander Hamilton. These were bold, courageous, visionary, brilliant people. And that is what is required for self-government to work. For us to have a republic, a democracy, a free society, you don't just get privileges. You actually have to have responsibilities, which is to say, America's not about being able to smoke weed and carry a gun and get gay married and, drive like a maniac. America is supposed to be about we can choose our own destiny. But in order to do that, we have to be prudent, we have to be virtuous, we have to be hardworking, responsible, we have to be rightly guided. And those were the kinds of people that built this society, that fought for our independence, that fought for our right to self-determine, to determine our own course. And they were truly great men. They were the best among us. So for the lowest common denominator, it would be good for them to get inspired about where we came from and kind of what we need to be to keep what we have here.
This brings me to another point. Nick, you're a self-proclaimed racist or racialist. Do you think America should bring back segregation?
No, but what I would say is that people should have the right to live among their own people. And I think that sort of a loaded question, which is a fair question, but what we are undergoing right now is the greatest sociological experiment in world history, which is to say that we all know that in 1965, America was a 90% white country, 90% white, 10% black, and maybe a little bit in the middle there was Hispanic, Asian. People really don't understand that. It was 90% white and mostly Christian. And people can feel however they want about it. Now we're a 60% white country. And in 10, 15 years, we're going to be a 50% white country. Now think about how much changes with that. These are people that came here largely through immigration. They speak different languages. They have different alphabets. They don't even use the same letters. They come from different continents. They have different religions, different customs, holidays, heroes. They have a different sense of humor. They have a different look. Everything about them is different. And we're basically being told that we have to accept this transformation. Your neighborhood that was one way, that was a Christian white neighborhood, is now going to be a 80% Indian neighborhood, or now it's going to be 80% Somali, or now it's going to be 80% Mexican. And now all of a sudden...
Starfish said, why are you giving this human trash a platform? I'm not giving him a platform, chat. At the end of the day, I'm just here for the interview. At the end of the day, I'm not here. I'm not pushing an agenda. I'm not here saying I agree with him or I don't agree with him. I'm just here to just give you guys the content, react, see their perspective, see where they're coming from, see what's wrong, what's going on in their mind. But I'm not giving him a platform. I'm not shouting him out. At the end of the day, chat, this is all entertainment purposes only. Don't take it too deep. At the end of the day, chat, I dive into any type of topic. And at the end of the day, chat, if you agree with this, I welcome you in the stream. If you don't agree with this, I welcome you in the stream, you know? If you're right wing, left wing, in the middle, you don't, or if you don't, you know, categorize yourself with anything, you're welcome on my stream, chat. I'm not here to judge, point fingers at nobody. All of this is just, you know, I'm just watching a video, you know what I'm saying? I'm not giving nobody a platform, though. Thank you so much for your comment, though, at the end of the day. Appreciate you. And if you have any doubts about this, or you have any questions, or if you want to know my opinions or something, you are welcome to ask me at the end of the day, chat. No, I'm not. I'm not really here to give nobody a platform. I'm just streaming. Thank you so much.
Signs are going to
And if
be
you haven't already, hit that like button, chat. You know what I'm saying?
in Arabic. And now the mayoral candidate is going to be fighting with clan warfare with this other Somali people. And now you're going to be celebrating Diwali in your subdivision instead of Christmas. And people are starting to say, wait a second. This doesn't feel like America. America's apple pie and baseball and Merry Christmas and Marshall Fields. You know, we're in Chicago after all. People are saying, I don't like that this is happening in my neighborhood. I want to go somewhere where it feels like America. But it turns out you can't do that. Because if you want to set up shop in a neighborhood and say, this is where it's going to be white people and we're going to have our white culture and our Christian culture, that's called segregation. That's called white supremacy. That's called white nationalism. But I would say, how is
Starfish said, gotcha. This is what the world needs a lot less of. Thank you so much for your opinion. Your opinion matters at the end of the day. If you feel like people like Nick don't deserve to have a platform or whatever, or this is like, the example that shouldn't be out here, your opinion matters, and I feel like, you have the right to, point that out. And if you feel otherwise, I feel like you have the same type of opinion. Thank you so much for your comment, Starfish. I appreciate you.
is it fair that you have entire neighborhoods called Little Haiti, Little Cuba, Little this, that, the other, and they set up an ethnic enclave and they make it very comfortable for themselves. They have their parades, but if white people want to go in our own country where our ancestors were at, not mine, but some people's ancestors were here at Jamestown, or they were here at, the Virginia colony. If they want to go and set up a neighborhood, they say, oh, that's racist. I think people should be able to choose to live among people they're with. I'm not a believer that, people need to drink out of a separate water fountain because they're racially inferior, but I believe that we should be able, as white people, to express our culture in our neighborhood the way that every other group of people seems to be able to now that we have a multiracial country.
So is there a policy that would ensure that? Or like, what would that look like logistically?
I think that first of all, you have to get rid of the Civil Rights Act, because the Civil Rights Act would say that you cannot voluntarily self-segregate in that way. It would make it illegal. So you have to overturn elements of that. And then the other thing is there's a lot of backdoor policies that literally aim to break up white neighborhoods. Like the Obama administration had a policy at HHS where they said that if a neighborhood was not diverse enough, they would bring in Section 8 housing. They would say, if your neighborhood is more than 50% white, we're going to put Section 8 in your neighborhood. And what do you think Section 8 is going to attract? I mean, it's like a deliberate war to make sure that there are no white neighborhoods. And
chat, let me know your opinions about this. I know these type of topics are a little bit sensitive to some people. As you guys know, I'm Mexican. I live in Mexico. I'm literally in Mexico, chat. I live out here. This is my home. I'm also an American at the end of the day, chat. I feel like American isn't a race, but it's mainly like a culture, I feel like you identifying as an American, you don't gotta be a specific skin tone or a specific come from, specifically Caucasian people, but I feel like it's an identity, you feel me? I'm American, I love this country, and I'm a patriot, you feel me? And at the end of the day, I feel like you should agree to our founding fathers. I feel like our founding fathers, George Washington and them, were really great people, and they were really great role models for America. So I completely agree that, at the end of the day, our founding fathers, we should really look up to them. And I feel like that's true America. You feel me? We should follow those type of values to continue to make America great. Now, as in for what Nick says, in my opinion, I feel like he's a little bit wrong, but everybody has their opinion. At the end of the day, it's a free country, and I feel like everybody has their own freedom of speech, And if you feel some type of way, I feel like you should go out there and you should just, be loud about it. You feel me? So I'm not here to say he's correct or I agree with him, but at the end of the day, as an American, I feel like he should have he should be able to like speak his own truth. You feel me? I don't know if that makes sense for you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't already, hit that like button, and if you want to discuss it in the comments, go ahead, comment. Let me know what you think about this, or your opinions about Nick Fuentes. Chat. I'm always listening, and how I said, I'm not biased, and I'm not here to push an agenda. Chat. I'm 100% Mexican. I live in Mexico. My daughter from Mexico, so for anybody, okay, for Jada, why are you watching this, bruh? Entertainment purposes only.
It would be one thing if they were doing that to everybody, because at least you could argue that that's fair, but they're
Rod and
not.
Roll said, W,
In
love
Chicago,
you, bro.
Little
Thank you
Village
so
is
much
all
for tuning in,
Hispanics.
bro.
Pilsen's all Hispanics. Garfield Park is all blacks. But you go out to the suburbs where it's white people and it's nice, they want to bring in Section 8 and say, no, you can't all live together as white people. Well, so our options are what? We're going to live in the South Side, or we're going to live in Little Mexico? It's just, that's not right. So anyway, I think they should just play by the same rules and reverse some of those policies.
Do you think you'd feel differently about this if you were raised in Saudi Arabia?
As a white person or as an Arab?
An Arab, yeah.
Well, I mean, if you're coming from a different culture, that's sort of the point.
Right.
It's like you're not the same. And so somebody that's coming from, let's say, Saudi Arabia, why would I want to leave? If I'm Saudi, I live in a country with all Arabs and all Muslims. They don't even allow churches over there because it's a holy land. It's the land of the prophet. And the Hijaz, forget about it. In Mecca, Medina, you're never going to get a church. You're never going to get a synagogue. Osama bin Laden, part of the fatwa is because we had a military base in the Holy Land in Saudi Arabia. And that's sort of the point, which is that if you're born in India, you're born in China, you have my sympathy. But if you're born in these other countries, that's your home. We're doing things the way we've done it for 3,000 years, since the Indus River Valley civilization. We have our Chinese culture, we have our Indian culture. We could always go home. But if you're born in America, you're told this country's for everybody. Oh, your neighborhood is being changed? Well, that's the value of diversity. And it's like, well, you have a home, you have a place to return to. Where's my home? My home is for everybody. My home is supposed to be here so everyone can have an opportunity and everybody can set up a homeless encampment.
Okay, chat, look, really quick, chat. I feel like what he's trying to get to say here, chat, is pretty much saying, why doesn't he have why can't he pretty much find the same home? Like me, okay, I live in Mexico, right, chat? And of course, me as a Mexican, would I want other people from other countries to invade Mexico or to, bring their cultures and erase our traditions here in Mexico? No, I wouldn't want that, because I feel like Mexico is a beautiful place. Mexico is a beautiful country. And I feel like our people are beautiful, you feel me? I feel like our traditions, our cultures, have been around through centuries, if not thousands of years, And for somebody to come in and, invade us and, repopulate themselves in our country would possibly be, could possibly replace Mexicans and erase the identity of Mexicans. So I feel like in one way or another, he's trying to explain that, but as him being American, you know what I'm saying, chat? Even though I believe that, I don't know, I've heard that Nick Fuentes is a Mexican, but I think he's like mixed, he's Caucasian at the same time. Chat, I don't know, what do you guys think about that, chat? You know what I'm saying? Honestly, how I said earlier, I feel like being an American is an identity. It's not really about a race, because at the end of the day, Americans didn't really have a race. I feel like George Washington and them weren't really just Americans. They came from Britain. You feel me? These people have British descendants. You feel me? So at the end of the day, you can't really be like, oh, okay, I have American descendants, because at the end of the day, the white people came from British, the Hispanic people came from Latin America, and then we also had the Spanish. The Spaniards came to America as well. So it's really, America, I feel like it's not a race, but it's an identity. You feel me? If you feel like, you agree with certain things, like if you feel like you agree with what our founding fathers established our country as in America, I feel like you are an American. You feel me? If you believe in the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, you feel me? I feel like that's what makes you an American. You feel me? And I feel like if you're not out here trying to abolish that, I feel like you're 100% an American, Chad. I feel like freedom of speech is what makes you an American at the end of the day. You feel me? And I do feel like Christianity, Christian values created America, and I feel like it should stay in America, me as a Christian person, you feel me? Now, do I agree with what Nick is saying? Not really, but I see the perspective that he's talking about, you feel me? But at the end of the day, Chad, I don't feel like America is a race. When I think about America, I think of somebody who identifies as an American, who loves the country of America, who loves the values of America. You feel me, chat? Let me know in the comments if you agree with me, if you disagree with me, if you feel some type of way. Let me know. Let's engage and conversate and discuss about this. Thank you guys so much for viewing, chat. If you haven't already, hit that like button and subscribe. Let's get back to the video.
White people in Europe and the United States are saying, well, what about us? Do we get to have a country? Do we get to have a government, traditions? So in some ways, you would feel badly being born in these other countries because you're impoverished and there's inequality and things like that. But at the same time, you still have a sense of belonging, a sense of home that white people increasingly don't have.
It is interesting how white people often face backlash for like going somewhere like Hawaii or going somewhere like
But I would also say this, as an American, I feel like it's not that I would abolish other people from coming to Mexico, because I feel like immigration is good, gentrification is good in some type of way. For somebody who has invested in Mexico, I have property in Mexico. When people come in, foreign investors come into Mexico and invest in like a city just like Monterrey, it brings my properties to go up in value, so it helps me out a lot in that case. But I wouldn't really want all of Mexico to be invaded by a bunch of foreigners and just get mixed up and erase the identity culture of Mexicans. You feel me? But I feel like gentrification is a good thing for Mexico. And yeah, I feel like culture should also be welcomed. I feel like Mexico City is a big ass city in Mexico, and I feel like it's great because of so many people that are in there. It's a bunch of immigrants in Mexico City in a bunch of cultures. It's very diverse. If you haven't been to Mexico City, I suggest you go to Mexico City soon, so you know what I'm talking about, chat. But yeah, I just had to point that out really quick.
We think like Indonesia, Bali, like Thailand areas, they're like, you're taking away the opportunities from them. You're spending all this money being lavish, but it's not the same on the reversal. Mm-hmm. So do you think America should be a Christian nation?
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
I think that I don't believe in a theocracy. I don't think that the church should run the government. And as Catholics, we're also against that in the modern era, at least, and because it wasn't like that before.
Yeah.
But I do believe that the legislators, the government, I think that it should be made up of all Christians, all professing Christians, and people that are guided by Christianity. And the reason being is because how a society is governed reflects a form of morality. Why do we say you can't kill? That's a moral virtue. Why do we say you can't steal? You can't. That all reflects morality. That all reflects a position on morality. And you go to other countries, for instance, and it's not the same. In India, honor killing is a huge deal. If your daughter dishonors the family, they kill her. That's part of the culture. In the Muslim world, you have religious laws that oppress women. I think it goes, and for me, I think it goes too far. I think it's inhumane to tell women they have to wear a niqab everywhere. They have to cover themselves completely. The kind of abuse the women are treated with over there. but it reflects their morality. Their tradition, their religion creates their culture and ultimately their laws. And so when we look at the United States, we love the United States. We love the idea of human rights and equality and liberty and all these things. All these things come from a Christian morality. All these things come from a Christian civilization. When the United States was founded, I believe it was no fewer than 8 of the original colonies that had a state church. There was a church for that particular colony or that particular state. So people like to say, oh, well, Thomas Jefferson was a deist. Everybody in the colonies was Christian. Almost all the colonies had their own churches. It was founded, framed, pioneered, built by Christians. And in fact, the civilization that spawned America was Christian also. England, Spain, France, Italy, all the explorers and colonists that ever set foot in America, they were all Christians. So, people think that things are going to go the way they are without Christianity, not understanding that Christianity is a fundamental pillar and how things got to be this good. So you take that away, it's like pulling a leg out from under the table. The whole thing's going to collapse. So it's not a question of whether we should remain a Christian country.
So there's no policy that you would adjust to make sure that America's like a Christian nation, only the members of, not Parliament, but Congress in the presidency are Christians. Like there's no policy changes you make.
I would make a policy change that you have to be Christian to be elected.
Do you think that kind of plays along the line of being meshing of church and state, though?
No, I don't think so, because the Establishment Clause is really speaking about the church as an institution and saying that the church has this moral authority, the government has a civic authority. And it's a question of, is there a conflict of interest when the two institutions are merged? In other words, are the priests going to be magistrates? Are the pastors going to be, are they going to have a sort of civic authority over us? And what kind of corruption does that create? Does the state corrupt the church? Does the church? So I think as long as you separate the institutions and just say you have to proclaim Christ to be elected, I don't think there's a problem there.
Do you think AI is part of God's plan for humanity? Or do you think it's man playing God?
Well, the Catholic Church takes a position that technology is neutral. It's how you use it. So there's some Christian sects, like the Amish, the Mennonites, who will say, well, technology is evil. But we believe that it could be used for good or for evil. And I think that all of it, everything that happens is part of God's plan. So it's happening. It's part of it. The concern is how our concept of AI might undermine our concept of what makes us human. Because what makes us rational is that we have memory, will, and understanding. We possess that trinity of things. Our conception of the past is memory. We don't live in the past. We have memories of it. We have a will. We make decisions. We guide our own actions. And we have understanding because we truly contemplate the meaning of things, of our sensory experiences. And that's what makes us rational as humans. AI doesn't have any of those things. It certainly has memory. It stores information, but does AI have will? Is it self-directed? Can it set itself in a direction and make a decision? I don't think so. Does it have understanding? Does it truly comprehend the things that it's saying, let's say for an LLM? No, it doesn't really understand. If you understand what an LLM is, it's prediction. It's a statistical model. And so I think what is called artificial intelligence is sort of a misnomer. It's really like an advanced calculator. And I think that maybe what will wind up happening is that in our quest for sentient AI or an artificial general intelligence, is we'll find that whatever this is that we're creating is fundamentally distinct from the human self. And it might actually teach us something about who we are and what makes us distinct. So I think maybe the AI engineers, they might be in for a rude awakening when they realize that a genuine AI is literally impossible because it will never be ensouled or conscious in the way that a human being is.
Nick, tell me if I have this right. You regularly went to underground Latin Mass during COVID. Is that true?
No.
No?
No.
It's AI.
One thing I do want to question is, So he says that AI cannot be capable of those things, right? But what if you integrate human consciousness with AI? You know what I'm saying?
AI hallucinating on me. But did you go to Mass during COVID?
I did, yeah.
Got it. And like, how are they doing that? Was it not shut down?
Well, they made some, I think in the early days, they didn't have anything in place. It was 5 years ago, so I don't really remember. I think at some point we came back and everybody was wearing masks. And the major change that they made is the sign of peace. So in the old days, when you did the sign of peace, you would shake hands with everybody. Peace be with you. And now you do like a wave. Peace be with you. You do a wave. And that's the only real major change. They did masks, they did that, but overall it was basically the same.
Do you ever regret not becoming a priest?
No, I don't think I was up for that.
No?
No, because I wanted to be a priest when I was very young. I used to tell my mom I wanted to be a priest when I was like a little kid, which I forgot about. She told me about that. She's like, you always wanted to be a priest. But I don't think that I have the discipline for that, honestly. I think that that's a vocation. You're called to do that by God. And I, at a very early age, I wanted to do it, but I think that I'm a little too maybe undisciplined, eccentric to be able to live a life like that.
Because you're a smart guy and you're a moral guy. You definitely try to hold yourself from vices, but like it seems as though you kind of put yourself in the situation where you kind of have to say inflammatory things that might not be morally aligned with you. Maybe they are, but something like being a priest or being a monk might align with you more. I don't know. I'm just thinking about this.
That's an interesting thought. Yeah, because it's true. I mean, when you're in politics, you're in the world. You're dealing with the practical reality of power and flesh and human beings, and so it's like anything. You engage with it, and it's like the abyss. You stare into the abyss, and it stares back into you. And in a sense, there's something maybe as a priest, you're insulated from these things. When you're in the monastery, you don't have to think about things in a practical way. You don't have to think about those sorts of things because you're focused on the moral law and you're living in a sort of moral bubble, essentially.
Right.
Not to say that priests don't sin. Of course, tons of that going on, obviously. But I guess I would consider myself, my vocation is I'm more of a warrior. You know, there's this idea of like you're a priest or a warrior. As somebody that's a true fighter, I think I just have the spirit that is driven to compete and fight, and especially fight for justice in the world. And I don't think it's even possible to act in a completely priest-like way when you're doing that. I try to do that, but I think it's easier said than done.
If you had 5 minutes with Jesus Christ, what would you say to him?
No, that's a big question. Well, I would ask for forgiveness. I would ask for a pardon, certainly. But I would ask about the secrets of the universe. I would want to know, I would want him to tell me the whole plan. He'd probably have a better idea of what to say to me than I would have a question to ask him. But I guess maybe more than anything, I would just beg for a pardon. I would beg for mercy and forgiveness. But I don't know that I would ask him any kind of theological question. I would be a much more humble approach. If I could ask an historical figure, I'd have tons of questions, but someone like you're talking to God, it would be more like, please don't send me to hell.
What do your prayers look like?
Well, I pray before I eat. I pray when I'm in danger. I pray when I drove here, because I had to drive through the ghetto to get here. I had to get off at Independence Boulevard to get here, so I was praying then. But mostly I just pray to set my intentions in alignment with God's, because I think a lot about prayer. And when people think about prayer, they think about petition. They pray for something. God, do this for me. Give me the strength. Protect me from this. Give me this. And I always thought about that. Is it that we didn't pray to God enough, that we don't live forever, that our family members die, that bad things happen to us? Because I don't think anybody prays. People say, please save my sick parents. Please, I don't want to get hurt. And then people die all the time. So you say to yourself, did they not pray enough? Did the prayers not work? And I think that the real object of prayer is more a presence, being in the presence of God and allowing maybe God to work on you, maybe opening your intentions and your will, sort of inviting God in and letting God guide your actions. It's really more about, people think about it in terms of God help me in my life. It's more like God guide my life. Use me for your purpose. That makes sense. Sort of setting the table in a different way. And so I sort of think about it that way, more like, let me say the right words to do your will. Let me do the right things to do your will. Give me more faith. Help me kind of develop as a person, protect me from temptation. It's usually things like that.
Do you have a journal that you write down your thoughts in?
I do not.
No? Do you think there's any significance to dreams?
I do. I'm a huge believer in dreams.
Have you ever had a dream that later became true?
Yes. Yes, and it was disturbing. I had a dream in August of 2019, and it was so vivid that I talked about it on my live stream. And I said, I had a dream last night that I was at a Charlie Kirk event, a Turning Point USA event. And maybe I'm not going to tell it perfectly, it was a long time ago, but I said it, and years later, somebody pulled the clip. And I said, in the dream, my followers were asking Charlie questions and pressing him, and they were being thrown out of the event. And then a month later, at Charlie Kirk's Culture War tour in Colorado, two of my followers went up and pressed him about the Israel lobby and about legal immigration. And it started the Groyper War, which was my followers followed him to every one of his events and asked him these questions, and they were being thrown out. And it became such a huge story. Eventually, Don Jr. was asked these questions at UCLA, and it became a national story and really put my career on the map. And when that happened, I had totally forgotten about that dream. I'd never made the connection. But like I said, about 2 or 3 years later, somebody went back and found that clip and said, 2 months before any of this happened, you dreamt it. And I talked about it on the show because it was that, it affected me that much. So I'll never forget that. That was a very weird coincidence.
Does that happen a lot to you?
No, I think it was only that one time.
Yeah. Because I remember Candace mentioning some text messages about Charlie's dreams, maybe him knowing that he was going to die. I think someone said that those messages were fake. I'm unsure. But I guess if you had 5 minutes with Charlie Kirk, what might you ask him?
I really had no interest in discussing with Charlie Kirk. Charlie has become sort of a martyr now, and of course, I don't believe he deserved to die. I wish he was still alive. That being said, people forget, what was Charlie Kirk's business? He made $140 million per year at Turning Point USA. $140 million per year for a campus organization. You don't make that kind of money unless you are really taking money from everybody. Everybody will give it to you. Billionaires, Silicon Valley, special interests, India, I mean, you name it. They were taking money from everybody. And there's this debate about what Charlie Kirk's real views really were about Israel, for example. And the pro-Israel people say Charlie was with us until he died. The anti-Israel people say, no, he was changing his mind. Now, how can both of these things be true? Because Charlie would tell people what they wanted to hear. He was everything to everybody. And so to the pro-Israel crowd, he was pro-Israel until September 10th. To the anti-Israel crowd, if he had been alive for a couple more months, he would have really stuck it to them. And I think at the bottom, he didn't really have many real convictions. Other than that, I do believe he was a sincere Christian. And for that, I respect him. I do believe that he was pro-America. And so I respect him for that. Outside of it, we had a very intense and vicious feud because he was entrenched in politics and I was the congenital outsider. So I really wouldn't have much to say to him, to tell you the truth.
I have to know, what do you think about Erica Kirk?
Well, I got a lot of flack for this.
Yeah.
I criticized Erica Kirk. But look, here's the thing about Erica. Nobody wants to say anything about Erica Kirk because she's a grieving widow. And so that's just decency. Nobody wants to attack a young woman who lost her husband to a vicious public execution and now has 2 fatherless children. That being said, nobody would be saying anything if she went home and grieved. But she didn't do that. She immediately assumed control of Turning Point USA, which already was one of the most influential, powerful, conservative nonprofits and for-profit entities in the conservative movement, and which became far more powerful after Charlie died because of his apparent martyrdom. So within 72 hours, she becomes Charlie's successor. And now she's in Washington, D.C., it seems, all the time, with J.D. Vance, with Donald Trump, with all these other powerful people. Now, I'm going to tell you what I don't like. I don't like when people take tragedy or a sob story or something that's emotionally impactful and they use it as cover so you can't ask questions or criticize. And I feel like that's what is happening here. Like I said, if she were a widow grieving, no one should or could say anything about her. It would be out of line. But we're not talking about Erica Kirk, the grieving widow. We're talking about Erica Kirk, the president of Turning Point USA and close personal friend of J.D. Vance, heir apparent of MAGA. We can't ask questions about who this person is. We can't criticize or be skeptical of who she is because she cries. See, that I feel is manipulative, and that I don't like. So when people start to tell me for emotional or moral reasons, you can't ask that question, that's when I get even more suspicious. So Erica Kirk, I don't know her, and that's sort of the thing. Who really is she? I don't think anybody knows, actually.
Not to force you to give a take on it without evidence, but what do you think could be happening with her?
What I think, without knowing her or knowing Charlie personally for that matter, I get the impression that their marriage was political. I think it was arranged. And this happens in a...
Chat, this all I'm going to say about this topic is very sensitive. I feel like at the end of the day, she was Charlie Kirk's wife, and I feel like somebody has to carry the torch. Somebody has to carry the torch, chat. You feel me? Doesn't matter your opinions about Charlie Kirk or his wife or whatever. At the end of the day, Turning Point USA was was a powerful movement. And for her just to like leave it just like that, I feel like, no, I mean, me, if I was like Charlie Kirk and I'm Turning Point USA and I pass away, bro, I would want Turning Point USA to keep on going, you feel me? And I would want my wife, my kids, my mom, my dad, my brother, my sister, whoever's alive, whoever could carry the torch to continue preaching, to continue preaching to the youth. You feel me? So at the end of the day, chat, I feel like that's really what it is. I mean, like, why would you criticize somebody? Why would you criticize somebody for just keep that shit going? Keep that shit. You know what I'm saying? For wanting to keep your dreams, your ambitions, your like literally the whole movement that you created, the whole movement that pretty much represents you. You feel me? Or the person that you love the most. Why wouldn't you want to continue? Like, why wouldn't you want to continue that movement? You feel me? So that's my only take on this. It's very sensitive, but I feel like, come on, Nick, like, it makes sense. Like, that's her wife. She needs to continue the fucking movement, bro. Feel me?
Elite circles. Charlie was an ambitious and increasingly very powerful,
awesome. Thank you so much, bro.
Very young man.
I fuck with you too, bro.
Erica, from what I'm told, it was her desire to marry political royalty. She's one of these people. I don't know who her parents are, but she's since been seen in music videos and reality shows. She was trying to make a name for herself. And so you tend to find that among people who are rich and famous or influential, they don't meet their wife at a coffee shop or on a dating app. They get set up by other people. This powerful man needs a wife. This young lady wants to marry a powerful man. They get set up. And I get the sense, and I've heard a rumor, that that was something like an arranged marriage. Now, that doesn't mean there's inherently anything sinister going on there. And maybe they grew to love each other eventually, but it does speak to the fact that, maybe everything about Charlie Kirk's life was a fabrication. Candace Owens said it's like the Truman Show. It was a created world. Now, what Candace gets wrong is she thinks Charlie was a victim. I think he knew full well. He gave himself fully to the political grift, and that comes with it. Fake talking points, fake friends, fake patrons, fake messaging. And yeah, maybe even on some level, his family life was an artifice. It was sort of manufactured for public consumption. Now, that's me saying that from the outside looking in as someone speculating, but it looks to me like that was an arranged marriage. And if so, you have to wonder, does this woman have political ambitions? Because that's what everybody's thinking. This is your Kyle Rittenhouse. This is your, whatever. This is your political victim who is now going to give a political endorsement or maybe be a political contender in the future. That's what makes me a little skeptical. When she said this line about the cries of this widow will echo like a battle cry, and she goes up on the show a week after his death and says, we have more business than ever. We're going to keep fighting. It's like, okay, so now you're a political figure. Oh, and also I can't criticize you because you were the victim of a tragedy. Something's not right there.
I was surprised, Nick, that maybe I hadn't consumed enough of your content at this point in time when Charlie was murdered, but I think I tuned into the live stream that night, assuming that you were like, this is a setup. I think a lot of people tuned in thinking that would be the case. It seemed as though you were quick to vehemently deny it was any kind of paid person to kill Charlie. You were like, this is an actual person, like a crazy person that killed him. Like, why was that so quickly your stance, I guess?
Well, because the big reason why I doubted there was any conspiracy is because Trump is in charge. So who would be conspiring? The FBI? It's Trump's FBI. Who would be conspiring? Trump's intelligence agencies? Trump was an ally of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk was not a radical. He was not a disruptor. He was a reliable ally of the system. He was a reliable ally of Israel, a reliable ally of the Trump government, a reliable ally of all the special interests that power the Trump government. Like I said, Turning Point was bringing in $140 million per year because they were happy with Charlie's work. So if somebody like Tucker got killed, everybody would know who to blame. If somebody like Candace got killed, everybody would know who to blame. Same thing with me. But the idea that Charlie Kirk was some kind of martyr for telling truth to power is so ridiculous because he was the power. He was an ally and a pawn of the power. Moreover, you look at the assassination. There were all sorts of doubts and questions that were raised in the early days. But when you really get down to it, this was not a sophisticated plot. The rooftop where Charlie was shot from, everybody had access to. No ladder required, no special equipment, freely accessible by anybody there. The event had no security perimeter. So they weren't looking at tickets, they weren't checking IDs, anything like this. He got shot once in the neck and then chaos. The guy turned himself in a couple days later. The idea that this was some kind of super sophisticated plot that required know-how and planning, it just isn't true. They were lax. They did not do their due diligence. The idea that somebody walked up on that rooftop without encountering security, which was freely accessible to anybody, and took a shot, to me, that's not crazy. And I would say that we have a lot of that going on. Luigi Mangione, there was a school shooting the same day that Charlie Kirk got killed in Colorado. There was a school shooting by a transgender a couple weeks before that. So I think that, I guess the two flaws in the conspiracy thinking is one, the idea that Charlie was a target of the powerful, and two, that we don't have a problem with left-wing violence or, crazy left-wingers that want to kill right-wingers. That's very real. So at the end of the day, I just didn't see any compelling evidence for a conspiracy.
There was no benefit to there being a conspiracy.
Right. Yeah. There's nothing tangible at all.
That's interesting. I'll say personally, I thought that the interview of him and Shapiro, and he was like taking anti-Zionist views, seemed to be fairly compelling at the time. But my thing with it was, I was like, is Charlie really that influential though? Like, I don't know. Maybe in my circles, he's not super influential.
Even that, you got to understand, because people brought up that interview. So what happened that day? Tuesday, the day before September 10th, Israel bombed Qatar, which is a close ally of Trump and the Trump family and many people in the Trump cabinet. And it infuriated the White House. This was like so out of line and so unprecedented for Israel to do this. Charlie Kirk, to cover it, brought on Ben Shapiro and asked Ben Shapiro, hey, so do you think Israel's losing the PR battle? And let Shapiro freely answer with no pushback. So people say that that was Charlie pushing. I think that Charlie was playing devil's advocate. I think he was pushing the pro-Israel line by standing in for a skeptical Gen Z guy, asking what that guy would ask, so that Shapiro could make the case. And there's a big difference between the two. I don't think that he was fighting on that issue.
We went on a bit of a tangent there, but what's one thing your mother taught you?
Well, my mom taught me a lot, and my grandmother too. My mom and my grandmother they're Italian, very old school. You'd say they're grease balls, and so they had kind of an old world sensibility. I feel like a lot of white people, like you, like white people that are real, like waspy, like real whites. Real whites. They have this kind of like, their parents went to college. Their parents listened to Radiohead. Their parents like saw Star Wars in the movies. Or they like comic books. And so they have this very like maybe hippie or liberal sensibility. My parents were very old school, very like salt of the earth. Maybe you could say hardcore.
Chat,
and I guess
like
the biggest
button,
lesson
Thank you so much.
that my mom taught me, of which there were many, the one that stands out is that you never have as many friends as you think you do. My mom, my grandma, they always used to say, if you can count your friends on more than one hand, you better count again. Because a lot of people like to say, oh, I got this friend and that friend. But how many of those people really have your best interest in mind? How many of those people are real friends? They also used to say, you spend your summers where you spend your winters. In other words, the people that are there with you when you're riding high, when you're successful and everything's going right, they're not the same people that are with you when things are not going so well, when you need help, when maybe you're a liability. And you should share your triumphs with the people that are there for you when you're down. So I was really inculcated from a very early age with this kind of maybe wisdom about how people are, about loyalty, about what real friendship looks like. And I think that informs all of my politics. It's about looking for your people, looking for who's really your own kind. And that doesn't necessarily mean your own race, necessarily, but it means taking your own side, looking out for your own best interest, looking out for yourself, your family, your friends, your allies. That's really what my whole politics is based on some level, is that politics of personal loyalty. I guess that's the biggest thing that I was taught in a number of different ways.
You mentioned earlier in this interview losing 8 of 10 of your friends around the January 6th incident. You said there was no one in particular that stuck out as being a hard one to lose. Who's that person that's kind of been there with you for all of it that maybe you haven't talked about? You don't have to dox them, but...
Well, there's been many. I've met, and that's a lame answer, but...
Who's the person you call when something really bad happens, I guess?
Well, nobody. To be honest with you, I'm not really close to anybody like that, unfortunately. When you're someone like me, you can't trust anybody. And the reason why is because when somebody really wants to hurt you, or kill you, they know that they can't get to you, they'll go for the next best, which is the person you trust, the person you care about. And maybe that person loves their family more than they want to protect you. And so you realize that if more than one person knows anything, it's not a secret. And so that goes for any weaknesses, vulnerabilities. You really can't confide. And it's sort of sad. That's a luxury that people take for granted, that they can confide in people and get comfort. They could get a sort of peace of mind. But this is the struggle of a warrior, of a true leader. And not to sound self-aggrandizing in that way, but that's really what it means to be, in my opinion, a man. Is when you are a man, you're not contingent. People lean on you. You don't lean on anybody. And at the highest level, which is politics, that's maybe the highest level of human competition. If you're seeking a leadership position, if you want to be a leader, you have to be completely self-reliant. And you can't actually have true friends in that way when you're at the top on that in a political landscape. So I don't really have anybody like that.
Even your family?
Even my family. I mean, I confide in my mother and my father. I trust them, but I don't want to burden them, At a certain point, when you're a young man, you realize that your parents can't solve all your problems. And you actually have to worry more about them than about yourself. If I tell my parents about my troubles, it's might be a burden on them. So you have to look out for them in the way that maybe one time they looked out for you.
On January 6th, a lot of people ended up in jail at the Capitol. This is a common conspiracy theory about you, by the way, that I have come to the conclusion is not true. We don't have to talk about why you didn't get in trouble for January 6th. I think if anyone really looked at the timeline of events, the things that Nick said, the case around it, it's all very publicly available. And I don't want to bore everyone with the details of why he didn't get in trouble, but around the time you received a large Bitcoin donation and you had this federal case, right? So and this is my conspiracy, did the federal government think that you were a crisis actor paid to incite violence?
I think they did. It's funny you say that because I think that's exactly what happened, actually, is, and the story of January 6th is a long and complicated story, which is really unique to my situation because it does have to do with the Bitcoin donation. And basically, in December of 2020, I got this huge Bitcoin donation, which when I received it, I had no idea who gave it to me. It was an anonymous donation. And so an anonymous person basically sent me one email and said, I sent you some Bitcoin, and it was $250,000. And I replied and said, hey, let's get on the phone. I appreciate the donation. Is there anything I could do? And I never heard back. Well, then January 6th happened, and the government found out who this person was. That donation became a subject of an investigation. And they determined that it was a French hacker who apparently left a suicide note, and in the note said that he was bequeathing his fortune to people that he thought were fighting for Western civilization. Now, I don't know. That is what is reported. I assume that's true because they did find that someone committed suicide the day I received the donation from the person who left the note. But what I think the government concluded is that this was a foreign operation, that I received a vast sum of money from maybe Russia or France or some other country to lead an attack on the government. And I think that because, and it looked very suspicious because it was a huge amount in Bitcoin right before the Capitol attack. And I think they saw that and assumed that this was some kind of foreign operation. And then their next move is lock up the money and prevent me from fleeing. So they put me on the no-fly list to prevent me from flying to another country. And I think they froze the money so that they could look into my situation. Maybe wait for that.
Chicago.
Chicago for you, right? So I think that they launched that investigation with the assumption that they would find out that I was sponsored by a foreign government. And when they determined that that was not the case, I think they released me from the no-fly list, released the money, and they stopped the investigation.
How did they determine that?
Well, they investigated me thoroughly. There were no fewer than 3 U.S. attorneys that were on the case. I'm sure I got a letter, I think last year, 5 years after the fact, exactly 5 years, which said that the FBI had subpoenaed my communications from a telecom company. So I think they went through my texts. I think they went through all my information, and they just found that that wasn't the case. I think the Chainalysis, which is a U.S.-backed crypto investigatory body, they looked into the recipients and who sent the money, and I think they found that story checked out. Maybe they looked at all my communications. They subpoenaed me in Congress, deposed me, and I think that, they just found that that wasn't happening.
Do you think sometimes, though, it's possible that influencers or very influential people make plea deals based on blackmail or accusations to evade charges, to push certain narratives?
All the time. And it is really understated how much of that happens in the GOP. The GOP, more than there are even Jewish people, it's a lot of gay men. And it's a lot of gay that goes on. And all you have to do is take a look at who runs some of the media outlets and who some of the donors are. When you go to I don't want to be specific, I don't want to get sued or anything, but when you go to some of these events, that's basically what they're set up for. It's basically set up so that rich, gay, millionaires and billionaires can hang out with high school, college-age boys. That's what much of it is for. So they can be groomed. It's what it is. So that happens a lot. And so, of course, there's a lot of blackmail that goes with that territory. And then, of course, there's also a lot of federal informants in any organized group. I don't care who it is, any militia, any membership organization, there are bound to be federal informants. And that's been borne out in the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot. In 2020, 50% of the people involved in that were federal informants or assets. 50%, including many of the leaders of the group. So, in 2020, there's this big story that an Oath Keeper aligned group was going to kidnap the governor or something like that. And the people that were throwing the pizza parties for the losers that signed up for it were the federal government. So that happens all over conservative and I think liberal politics too.
Nick, do you ever fear that your platform is not being censored to the same extent that it was a few years back to rally support for Zionism, the implied anti-Semitism?
No, because a lot of people thought that this year because, let's be honest, free speech has largely returned to the internet, and there is a lot of legitimate anti-Semitism out there now, like stuff that really does cross the line, and it's all over X, and there's, generally Jewish or Israel critical content all over Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, in a way that there wasn't even a year ago, 2 years ago. And when I got brought back on Twitter and when my clips started to go viral, a lot of people said, are they allowing it because they have some ulterior motive? And I really was paranoid about that. I was trying to act a little more cautiously for that reason, especially this year. But what you're seeing now is they are throwing that in reverse. And now they bought TikTok to censor. They want to buy Twitter to censor. At the World Jewish Congress, its president, Ronald Lauder, called for anti-Semitism laws to be passed. So, no, I think especially now it's quite the opposite. They want to shut it all down.
I was just shocked to see, I wasn't allowed to post Andrew Tate on TikTok because his face is banned. Tristan's not. I was shocked that your face hasn't been completely AI banned from TikTok at the very least.
I think it is now.
It is?
I think so.
Huh. I know your name. You can't type it. You have to do some weird spelling. But I see some clips. I don't know. They can get the side of your face. But what's the one thing that you, Nick Fuentes, aren't allowed to say?
Well, if there's any pressure for me to not say things, at this point, I cannot signal anything against, let's say, traditionalism or white racialism, or what I mean by that is people expect me to be the far right firebrand. And so if you start to push temperance, caution, moderation, even just compassion, empathy, a lot of people in my audience get upset about it. I would say not most, but a very vocal minority. And I say it anyway. I say it all the time, and I make them very unhappy when I say certain things. But you see how some movements tend to be captured by their most radical members, because once you start to say that things are a conspiracy, once you start to say that, we're victims, we're being mistreated, there's a pull and a pressure to always go bigger, wider, more extreme, more intense, more angry, more cruel. And the older that I get and the longer that I do this, the more I try very hard to resist that impulse, almost like deliberately resist that, because I think that my movement has very legitimate grievances. And I think as long as I've been doing this, it's been motivated by a sense of justice and trying to set things straight. We want people to live better lives. And I think that if you are a deeply flawed person, it's easy to forget the reasons why you started doing something and to really get captured by bitterness and hatred and very negative emotions and maybe your worst impulses. So that's why I try to keep it focused on Christianity. I try to always bring it back to, at the end of the day, it is about the cross.
I will say that did surprise me with your content as well on the streams. It seemed like anytime one of your super chats was like saying like a bit of a crazy conspiracy, you'd be like, oh, shut the fuck up. Like just instantly out of the window. But like someone like Candace is like,
Chat. It's currently 3 a.m. for me, chat. All I want to do is say the video is pretty much over. It's like 5 minutes left. Anyways, all I want to say, chat, is happy Thanksgiving to all my viewers, to all my audience. And thank you guys so much for the support. Thank you guys so much. For hopping on my streams, chopping it up with me, letting me know your opinions. At the end of the day, chat. Just to clarify, this is all entertainment purposes only. It's a brand new, this Nick Fuentes and Jack Neel interview is a brand new interview. I said, you know what, let me just go ahead and watch it. You know what I'm saying? It's only 3 days old, so I said, you know what, let me go ahead and watch it. And, some things that you guys can see, some things I agree on, especially things that come up on as, religion and shit like that. I agree with it. But, there's some things that I don't agree with Nick Fuentes' views, and that's completely fine. I feel like everybody has their own perspective in politics, life, religion, and whatever it is. I feel like at the end of the day, as Americans, we have the right to believe in things, and we have the right to disagree with people, and we have the right to just, say whatever the fuck we want. You feel me, chat? And that's what my channel is all about, chat. I welcome everybody to my channel. I don't give a fuck what your belief is. I don't care what skin color you are, who you is, what your background looking like. I really don't care, chat. You feel me? At the end of the day, all entertainment purposes for you guys and all love for you guys. Thank you guys so much for supporting me. Thank you guys so much for showing so much love. You feel me? And I hope you guys enjoy the stream. And of course, not everybody's gonna agree with it, but you could enjoy it. And at the end of the day, chat, go ahead, give me a like button if you want me to continue making more streams like this. I know a lot of people don't agree with these type of interviews, but at the same time, chat, my niche is a little bit different. I try to dive into conspiracy theories, politics, dramas, and whatever's trending on the internet, chat. I'm a streamer, you feel me? And at the end of the day, I'm also a journalist, and I'm a commentator, and so I'm just streaming, guys. You feel me? Don't take it too literal. So much love to everybody, each and one of you guys. On this lovely Thanksgiving. Unfortunately, chat, I live in Mexico and I'm not able to get no fucking food, but I want to say this, chat. I'm thankful for each and one of you guys who tune in with my streams, who subscribe, who hit that like button, who always stay here and engage with me, who comment, you feel me? All of you guys, I'm extremely thankful, you feel me? Thank you guys so much, you feel me? It's a very unique Thanksgiving for me because I'm in Mexico this year and I'm not with my mom, I'm not with my dad. I'm not with my sister. I'm not with my cousins and the people that I love. I'm very far away. Um, and I got to spend today with you guys. You feel me? So I hope you guys enjoy the stream. Thank you guys so much. Tune in. I'm always streaming. I stream every single day, and I appreciate you guys. I'm a brand new streamer, guys, and I thank you guys so much for the support. I hope you guys have a good night.